Tonight, the Teen Titans bring back literally every single thing they have ever killed, except their readership numbers. Green Arrow manages to wrap up its first epic saga in a way that I think is pretty darn neat. And Justice League 3000's Hal Jordan shows us that it's not the size that matters, it's how the writers use you. All that and more tonight on the Not-So-New 52. Hello everyone and welcome to episode 140 of the Not-So-New 52. I am your host and I'm just going to tell you a quick little story before we jump right into comics. And that little story is back when this show was coming out on Mondays and then it shifted over to Tuesdays, I went to my significant other and I said, "Significant other, this is great. I'm going to have a whole extra day to film stuff. I mean, I'll keep filming stuff on Sunday nights, but if I don't get done, then I can just film on Monday nights as well. It's great and foolproof." And my significant other looked up at me and said, with that same exasperated sigh, "You're not going to do that. I know you. You're a procrastinator. You're not going to be recording on Sunday nights. You're going to put it off till Monday nights, and then it's just going to be the same exact story." And I said, oh, poppycock, significant other. That would never be the situation. I am definitely going to keep to that schedule. It is now 10:30 on a Monday night, and I am recording every single one of these comics, frantically trying to get them done before I need to put this video out. So, anyway, I don't know what the moral of that story was, and I'm not going to learn it. So, looking at the comics that are coming out this week, in no particular order, we have Detective Comics, Batwing, Batman/Superman, Green Lantern, Aquaman and the Others, Earth 2, Green Arrow, Justice League 3000, The Movement, Teen Titans, Phantom Stranger, Swamp Thing, and then our two annuals, Batman Eternal and New 52 Future's End. Of note out of those, Green Lantern is part one of the event, with a question on that, Uprising. The Movement is the final issue of that series. And Teen Titans is an annual, which wraps up that series as well. And then, just because I really like it, Green Arrow is the end of the arc that's currently ongoing there. Definitely go back and start from the beginning of the Lemire stuff if you have not been here catching up on that, because definitely worth going through. Really enjoyed this arc. Check it out. Anyway, like I said, gonna keep this brief because I want to go to bed at some point before the sun comes up. So yeah, let's start off with, I don't know, Green Lantern. That sounds good. Green Lantern number 31, written by Robert Venditti, arts by Billy Tan. This is part one of Uprising, a crossover with Green Lantern Corps, all about this Durlin plan to take out the Green Lantern. So, part one here, we open up with a Coon flagship that is ready to go. They're in the same space sector as Mogo, and it's like, all right, our fleet's ready to go. Are you set to go? And one of the bradesmen, the leader, whatever her name is, Nolange, is like, yep, I'm totally set. Let's do this. Remember, once all this is done, I'm going to have expanded territory for my clan. And Coon's like, yeah, sure, whatever. Like, we're here for the conquering and all that, but like, we don't care about what happens afterwards. And then one of the Durlins, who I believe it was at the end of last issue, got themselves a suit. They are now in a mech suit, and they were able to get out and like partake in the world. They're up on the bridge and just like, oh yes, the Durlins will be happy to join in on that. And they're just like, whoa, hey, ancient guy, you're here. And he's like, yeah, no, it's time for the Green Lanterns to finally reap what they sow. Let's get them, boys. So meanwhile on Mogo, Hal is talking to all of the Lanterns who have sworn off from using their rings, and he directs them over to the Coon ship that they have successfully won from their earlier trial by combat. And he's like, look, if you guys don't want to use your rings, that's fine, but that would make you a liability to be up in space, so I want you guys to be our intel unit. You are going to take apart this ship, scrap by scrap, and you are going to tell us absolutely everything, so that way we can be prepared for whatever the Khund army is going to fire against us. And everyone's like, all right, I guess that's a good use of our talents. I guess we can go ahead and do that. So there's one guy who stands off outside, not sure which one he is, but he basically is just like, look, you may have got the others on your side, but I'm not so sure. He's like, well, once you guys take it apart, I want you to put it back together because you're going to be the one piloting it. And he's like, all right, you got me. I'm in. So back in the mess hall, they had to fire all the cafeteria staff because of, Durlins. So there's nothing ready for meal-wise. And we get our little core group that is Hal's inner circle, along with whatever the guy's name is. It's the living energy one that we saw before. And we kind of get some backstory on the living energy guy, saying how he lives on a planet with a sea of fire and energy, and he's the first of his kind to ever be able to leave the sea because Green Lantern ring lets you do that, I guess. So yeah, he manages to come out. Meanwhile, Hal's sitting down with his group. He's like, all right, where are we in terms of a Durlin detector? And it's like, nowhere at all. It's actually like pretty much impossible. He's like, well, keep at it. Meanwhile, can we please get some staff for like the medical hall and also the mess hall, because we have hurt lanterns and we have hungry lanterns, and I think we need to care for them both. But then Mogo steps in. He's like, hey, Hal, you might want to know about this. And I was like, yeah, go for it, Mogo. He's like, there's a whole fleet of ships approaching me like really fast. So immediately all of the Green Lantern Corps scrambles and starts flying up into the sky. We have Kilowog basically saying like, oh, okay, hold on. That's not all just coon ships. That's ships for like people who used to trust us. Like that's a lot of different planet ships out there. And so like some of the Green Lanterns are recognizing ships from their home planets, and Hal connects into their transmission system. And he's like, hey, everyone, I know you guys think that we're tyrants, but I swear to you that we are not. We want to do what's best for everybody here. We are still your protectors. To prove that, just talk to us. Tell us what you want. We are totally open to that. The Green Lantern Corps is able to do what is necessary in order to make people happy under our protection. That's all I can offer you. And you see inside the ship, some of the people are like, oh, I mean, I guess there's no harm in talking. Why not? We should talk. But then all of a sudden, one of their ships blows up. And all the Green Lanterns start freaking out like, whoa, who fired? What's going on there? And we see one of the Green Lanterns saying, a Durlin is everything, a Durlin is everywhere. And then more and more start joining in the chant. And the Coon leader is like, there you go, guys. You see it? They shot at us. Open fire. Take out the Green Lanterns. So immediately the whole armada starts opening fire. The Green Lanterns are fighting against their own kind because some of them are secret Durlins. Hal's like, wait a minute, hold on. I thought that the Durlins were not going to be able to use our rings. What's that about? And immediately, like, I think it's Kilowog's just like, yeah, no, that doesn't make any sense. There's no reason they should be able to do that. That is totally against the rules we've set up so far. And so Hal's like, all right, get rid of their rings, take them out of our system. And Kilowog's like, only Guardians can do that. We don't have the ability to do that. That's not just something that comes with the tech. So all of their constructs start cracking, and everyone's just like, what are we supposed to do? We're surrounded on all sides. Everything's going wrong. And I was like, I am so sick and tired of being on the retreat and on the back foot. I'm going to take this fight to them. So he busts out, and he has super willpower now. He goes up against this fish-looking lantern who's a Durlin, and he's like, here's the thing, Durlin. You may have the ring, but the ring selected that lantern because they had willpower, and that's something you can't copy. And then all of a sudden, the Durlin's ring says, no willpower found, and it just falls off of him, leaving the Durlin just dangling in space. And then the ring starts flying off because it's like, oh, my host is dead. Wait a minute, no, he's not. I feel him. He's that way. The ring just flies off. And they just keep doing that over and over and over. They start taking out all the Durlins that are in their own ranks. And as they do so, the armada is still firing, but the rings are starting to get through. They're starting to move towards a different place. And the Khund are like, oh, yes, we can do it. Let's take them out. And immediately the Durlin guy's like, no, we just lost our entire element of surprise. Retreat fully. And the Khund's like, I'm sorry, I don't know the meaning of the words. Plus, your guys did absolutely nothing before they were caught. So what were they supposed to do in the first place? And he's like, that was for the element of surprise. And like, even with how many Green Lanterns are left over in there, this armada does not stand a chance against all of them. We have to bail. The Durlins have more plans in store. Trust us. And he picks up the Khund by like his neck and says like, and seriously, like, I will just straight up kill you if you go against me. And he's like, all right, cool. Let's everybody fall back. So all the ships start retreating, and Hal's just like, okay, I don't know what the hell is going on why the rings were able to be used by Durlans, but what I do know is all of those rings are currently going out to people who we thought were still with us. So they need our help. Let's go follow them. And to be continued in Green Lantern Corps. I like it. I don't want to make it sound like I don't like it with the exasperated sigh and all, but this issue doesn't feel any different than the last 6 issues. Yet this one is labeled as part 1 of the event, the part 1 of Uprising. And I don't get it. It doesn't feel any different, you know? Why is this now the event, whereas last issue was not? Maybe this is specifically okay, the final attacks have been launched and everything else is going on, but that just makes it feel like the third act. That doesn't make it feel like an event. Or even if you don't want to use the word event, a crossover. It just doesn't feel like it's earned that. But again, the story itself is not bad. It's purely from a branding perspective that I'm yeah, do we? So, all in all, I think I probably would give this issue... I mean, it's very fast-paced, and there is a lot of forward motion. I think it's a 7.5. I think it's a solid step here. My biggest critique is that they labeled it as an event. It doesn't feel like it is. If you just said this is the next part of the story, this is finally where things start to turn around and stuff is made clear to the Lanterns, cool. You earn the 7.5, no problem. This is only because of the extra little bit of branding, which I feel like is an editorial decision. Detective Comics number 31, written by Francis Manapul and Brian Buccellato, art by Francis Manapul. So last issue, a new rich person showed up in Gotham named Elena, and she got killed by a superhuman drug called Icarus, and she burned up on Bruce Wayne's doorstep. So immediately Harvey Bullock is in here saying okay, back in 0 Year, I dealt with Icarus. Me and my partner, we took out their entire supply, and now it showed back up here again on your doorstep, Bruce Wayne. I don't think that's coinky-dink, do you? And Bruce is just she showed up here. I don't know what you want me to say. That's all that happened. And he's oh, well, maybe you guys were having a bit of a party and you wanted to break out the good stuff. Is that right? And so he pulls out a little vial of it and he's this is a vial of Icarus. Where did you get it from? And he's you're the detective. You tell me where it was. She just showed up at my door. And he's oh, likely story. So at that point, he basically talks down to Bruce and says, look, if I need a drug test from you to make sure you're peeing clean, otherwise I'm going to have to get a warrant. And he's no, I'll do it. I'll gladly do it. I want to prove to you that way you can move on and actually follow real leads here. So he goes up and he gives a pee test, and then later on he heads out as Batman. And he starts investigating the woods that Elena ran through, and they find where her car was parked. She was running through the woods. She was being chased by somebody else. He finds out that she was injected at some point, and then they just let her go. They didn't give chase anymore. And it's just all right, that's weird, but why? What's going on there? So at this point, Batman's all right, because of the Icarus, that makes it personal for Bullock, and he's not going to be able to think clearly here. He's going to want to get this all wrapped up, which means I need to be the one that's impersonal about this. And Alfred's okay, but that was a friend of yours who burned up on your doorstep. Are you sure you're going to be able to be good? And he's I'm fine. I'm Batman. Don't worry about it. I'm clearly very able to deal with the loss of loved ones. So here we split into 2 simultaneous stories. I'll just focus on the GCPD one. Bullock and a bunch of other cops are going down to lockup where they have some links to the Icarus drug, the people that they arrested earlier on. And as they get down there and starting to question them, they find that they are killed in their lockup cells, and those were the only links they had to the rest of the drug team. So nothing much more they can do there. Meanwhile, we follow 2 of the drug dealers down in the Narrows. One is named Ash and the other is Lamar. Ash has apparently been out of the game for a while. He's got a big scar on his face, and he's hey, I'm looking for information on Icarus. What can you tell me about that? And Lamar is basically telling him nobody has it yet. It's super messed up. It's killing people. It's it's way out of our normal hands. And as Ash continues to press into that, trying to figure out more stuff about where the drops are, who he can talk to get involved with that stuff, a car pulls up on the street and says, "Hey, are you Ash?" And he's yeah, what about it? You looking for Icarus? Yeah, I am. And then all of a sudden he gets a shotgun to the chest. And he just straight up bleeds out there on the sidewalk. And Lamar and everyone else goes running. And the car peels off. And we see a white van pull up shortly afterwards and drag Ash's body into it. And turns out the white van was being driven by Alfred. And Ash was Bruce Wayne using a disguise. And he had protective, like, chest stuff on. He's fine. The real point was they put a tracking device onto the car that shot him because he was just going to keep on asking questions until somebody either pointed him in a certain direction or someone tried to shut him up and then follow them. So now with the tracker on there, he's found his lead. But first we had the funeral of Elena. And we open up with a congressman basically trying to blackmail/bribe one of the board members of Wayne Industries. And he's saying, like, look, I don't care what it takes. You just get Bruce Wayne to shut down his waterfront operations. I don't want any part of that to be going on because I think the waterfront was going to be turned into basically low-income housing and, like, stuff that would help off the less industrial people of Gotham. So at the funeral, everyone's gathered around. Bruce Wayne's there. And once people start to scatter, Harvey's left over. And he's like, well, we got your drug test back. You were clean, but something in my gut says you're still my man, so I'm going to keep a very close eye on you. And Bruce is like, cool, great, Harvey, but how about this? Instead of following your very ample gut, how about you follow the evidence that says that it isn't me? Because I really would love for you to actually follow up and finish up this crime scene. So later on, we see, one of the people who didn't attend the funeral was Elena's daughter. She just wasn't there. And we see where she was down in the Narrows. Apparently, she's also asking for Icarus. She's trying to figure out where that is located, but nobody has anything currently on them, so they tell her to check back later because it's going to hit the streets real soon. So down by the docks, Batman followed the tracking device, and he just leaps down and does his whole Batman Begins thing. He's, going around the docks, taking out some workers and whatnot. He finds a shipping container that has a whole bunch of people inside of it. And he's like, Alfred, this is bigger than drugs. I'm going to go quiet for a while. And so he sends Alfred off. He starts opening up all of the shipping containers until he finally gets to one where he's pulled inside all of a sudden. So it's lifted up in the air. Batman lights some flares. And he sees in front of him Sumo, who is just a big guy with a bunch of tattoos and good at fighting. And he starts rolling into Batman. He's just like, oh, I thought this would have been easier. Aren't bats supposed to be able to see in the dark? I've been sitting here adjusting to it all this time. I'm easily able to beat the crap out of you. So he starts laying into Batman and doing some pretty solid shots. But then Batman starts fighting back as well. And he's like, oh, is it so easy to betray your own people? Like you're human trafficking your own kind here. And he's just like, oh, betray them. I'm their salvation. And he tackles Batman out of the thing and saying he's giving them the American dream. He's giving them opportunity. That's what he's doing. So Batman manages to change the angle of the fall. He has Sumo land first onto the shipping container below. And he's like, look, I can already tell by the way you're breathing. You got like a fractured spine and several broken ribs and a punctured lung. Before you pass out, you tell me who did this. And Sumo does cough up the name of the Squid. So a couple people around the docks who Batman didn't get saw this happening, call it in, say, Batman's here. You got to pack it up and go. And he's like, right, we're out of here. So they pack up a truck. They have it go. And we're able to see the inside of the truck is filled with this person. I don't know how best to describe it. It's an energy source, but also like a person. He's hooked up to all these tubes, and we see that the boss of this whole thing is Holter, who says, yeah, well, he's a loose end. We'll go take care of him. So who is this guy? Why is he responsible for Icarus? I don't know. I have no idea, but we'll see what all that amounts to. Overall, fine issue. I do think there might be a few too many threads running right now, so I'd like to see a couple of those trimmed out or merged together. Obviously, we've got the stuff with, trying to find Icarus, which is not only Batman and Harvey, but also the daughter of Elena, which already is a bit thin, but then you're getting this whole waterfront scheme going on. It just seems to be a little bit thin. So I'd like at least one of those things to merge together and say, okay, it's Batman and the daughter working to find Icarus, and then the other stuff going on. But I probably still would give this a solid 7. I mean, if only for the art looking fantastic. The layouts are very much stylized, but very creatively done. Especially the fight scene between Batman and Sumo. It's just super fun to look at. You get a real sense of kinetic motion with it. Even if they are trapped in a shipping container, you can really feel it. So yeah, I'm going to say 7 for this. Batwing number 31, written by Justin Gray and Jimmy Palmiotti, art by Eduardo Pansica. So last issue, Batwing went down to the Gotham Underground, fought a bunch of Egyptian-themed gangs, and then Menace/Russell showed up. So we pick up with Batwing trying to escape with the head of the, I think they're like the Anubis boys or something, and Russell's just like, hey, you don't belong here. So he sets down Mother Anubis, that's her name, and he's like, get out of here, this is going to be a big fight. And she's like, excuse me, I run things here. And she starts talking to Menace saying, hey, he's on our property, you can't do anything, I'm the one who gets to take him out. And then he just backhands her into a wall and snaps her neck. And Batwing's like, what the hell is wrong with you, man? And he's like, oh, you think this is a game? Huh? No, there are no rules here, I can do whatever I want, I'm going to kill people if I have to. And Batwing says, has some respect for human life. And immediately Russell starts getting into like literary metaphor. He's like, oh, you see yourself as the knight in shining armor. Well, let me put this in terms for you. And he starts fighting against Batwing as the Anubis gang is like, wait a minute, hold on. He just killed our leader. So we're definitely against him as well. So they all try to rush in and try to fight Menace as well. And at this point, Menace is literally just quoting German philosophers. Like he says, it is in the dusky twilight the poverty with her mates vice and crime glide forth from their lairs. And I'm like, too dense, man, too dense. So all in all, it just goes down this thing of like, I don't know, some level of nihilism or something. And Batwing's like, all right, there's no Russell in there. That's just the monster. I'm going to do what I have to do to get my sister back. So let's go. So Batwing comes in and says, stop spitting out nonsense. And he's like, oh, Jesus. All right, let me educate you. It's a German philosopher. How dare you? So Batwing goes through like 6 walls as he's being thrown apart by Menace. He's unfazed. Batwing's just like, tell me where the kid is. I just want to know where she is. And Russell's just like, what do you care? Like, who? What, you're being paid by the family? You think that makes you some sort of hero? Whatever, who cares? So he stomps on Batwing out the window, and Batwing manages to use some foaming gas or something in order to get out from under his boot, and it sends Menace just careening down into a ship below. And he's fine. He's a little bit beaten up, but Batwing then comes down with a flying kick, and he just starts unloading into Menace. And he's like, I'm running on adrenaline, but I'm going to beat the ever-loving crap out of this guy. And as he's finally, like, done, Menace just looks up. He's like, is that all you got? So he shreds Batwing's wings and then lifts him up. And as he's coming back down, kicks him in the back and kicks him over into a cave wall. So no matter what's happening here, Menace is not letting up. He's following Batwing to the T, and he is just saying, like, yeah, no, I'm going to rip off your mask, and I'm going to see the face of this failed hero. So back up at the Fox family mansion, Tam is back home, but she is still a vegetable. She's brain dead. And they're feeding her, Lucius and his wife, Tanya. And Tanya's just breaking down. She's just like, oh, our daughter is not meant for this. She was so good. Why did this happen to us? What is the police doing? What's Bruce Wayne doing? What's Batman doing? Why aren't they helping? And Lucius is just like, I've told them. I'll ask them again. I'll call again. And she's like, it's not good enough. And she takes Tam away. And Lucius is immediately just like, I'm losing my wife and my daughter here. Like, everything's going to hell. I don't even know where my son is right now. And he just goes out into his garage, sits down in a car, and just prays to God that something gets better. So then we cut over to the lair of the rat catcher where Tiffany is, and she finds a letter opener inside of a drawer. So she hides it inside of her sock and then tells Ratcatcher, like, I gotta go to the bathroom. And he's just like, all right, follow me. So he takes him down a hall, and it's the most disgusting toilet you've ever seen in your life. And she's like, oh, no, I'm not using that. And he's like, I'm not supposed to let you go anywhere else. But she just whines and complains and complains, and he's like, fine, whatever, Jesus. So they start walking through the underground, and they come across like a street vendor guy who's just like, hey, Ratcatcher, you're kind of a creep, and this young girl doesn't look like she wants to be with you. What's that about? And Tiffany takes the distraction to stab the letter opener into Ratcatcher's leg and starts running off. The guy at the vendor's just like, I knew it, you were peddling in kids. You're going down for that, Ratcatcher. And Ratcatcher then takes the letter opener out of his leg, stabs it into the guy's eye, and just runs off after Tiffany. So, back at the Batwing fight, as Menace goes to take off Batwing's mask, he glows his beacon from his chest, blinding Menace long enough for him to get a few good shots in. And he kicks Menace into the water, and he pulls the Batman Begins, where he's like, I'm not going to kill you, but I don't have to save you. And as Menace is flailing about, the giant fish from the beginning of the last issue comes up and seemingly swallows Menace whole. I say whole, there's a lot of blood in the water, so probably not whole. And so Batwing turns away, and he walks away from the dock, and of course the camera holds on the dock. A hand shoots up out of the water, and we see Menace, very bloodied, very broken, but still saying, oh, Luke Fox was a hero, and, putting the pieces together. I kind of glossed over it, but a lot of the stuff that was going on as Menace was quoting philosophers and then Batwing was responding and stuff like that was a lot of pseudo-religious talk. It was ideas of heroes and gods and stuff like that and all that sort of stuff. And then counter that over to Lucius in his car praying to God. This issue got very strangely religious in a lot of ways. And I'm not inherently opposed to that. I actually think a lot of what Phantom Stranger was doing with religious stuff was very interesting. But in this, it just kind of comes out of nowhere. And I'm not sure it really earned it. It just seemed very out of place to me. I guess is the best way I could say it. Is that all of a sudden they're just talking about the merits of morals and murder and gods and heaven and stuff like that. And it's all right, I mean, I guess I see what you're doing, but you literally spent the entire last issue just fighting a giant fish and doing an undercover thing. I don't feel like this is the arc, This isn't the arc to cover that. But all in all, I mean, it's not a bad issue. I would still probably only give it 6. It's a lot of fighting. There's not a lot of movement to it. And by the end of it, we feel like we're kind of in the exact same place because Menace is still around. Batwing still hasn't found a sister. Nothing has particularly moved forward. So yeah, I'll give this one a 6. Batman Superman number 10, written by Jeff Lemire, art by Karl, Kerschl, and Scott Hepburn. So this is pretty much a one and done. And we open up in Shade headquarters. Shade is, of course, from Frankenstein and the Agents of Shade, or something like that. And we just kind of get a recap of hey, here's all the stuff happening in DC Universe that's being written by Jeff Lemire. We got Justice League United and Green Arrow. That's happening. So all of a sudden, an alarm starts going off, and Shade, for anyone who doesn't know, is kept in a tiny little ball that just kind of hovers around the world, and that makes it almost impossible to find. But we see that the alarm goes off because Superman has plucked it out of the sky, and he's like, hey, let me in to see Dr. Ray Palmer. So he goes in, or he doesn't go in. They send out Ray Palmer, send him down to the Fortress of Solitude. And Superman's like, hey, Ray Palmer, you're the one who came up with all the shrinking tech stuff, right? And he's like, yeah, totally. Why? And he's like, Batman, we were up in space, saving a space station. And then when Batman came back down to Earth, he just fell over and fell into a coma. And Palmer's like, okay, but why am I here? And Superman shows a little x-ray machine. He's like, I did my microscopic vision on him, and I managed to find this in his bloodstream. And he shows a picture of what seems to be a super eensy-teensy, weeny, tiny little superhero dead in Batman's bloodstream. And he's like, that's weird. And he's like, you want to see something weirder? And apparently up in Batman's brain, blocking a blood vessel, is an entire microscopic city. And Superman explains, something got into his brain when we were in space. It's super small. I can't risk, if there are people in there, I can't just destroy it. So I need you to help me shrink down, figure out what's going on in there, and get it the hell out of Batman's brain because he's, in a coma. And he's just like, yeah, all right, I can do that. So he gets a shrinking suit for Superman. He explains all the rules of like, okay, yeah, you'll shrink down, you'll still be able to breathe and all that. If something happens to you, you'll automatically grow again. Everything will be fine. You'll be outside of Batman. You will not explode him from the inside. Just making that clear. So at that point, Superman makes the point of saying like, hey, with your suit and everything on, you're kind of dressed like a superhero. Do you have a code name? And he's like, I don't need a code name. I'm just a scientist. Nothing more than that. So they go down inside of Batman, which they reach this area and there's like blood red skies and such, which do imply they're in the body. But like they're also on grass, which is weird. So they see this whole thing and Superman points out like, okay, hold on. I'm looking at this structure more now and I'm realizing this was a spaceship. This was a ship with a whole city on it that just like landed inside Batman's brain. That's messed up. So they find a woman and her child, both of an alien species, just running, decking it out towards them, scared out of their minds. They can't speak English, and Superman's like, I can't understand them. What do we do? And so Palmer says that he has some shade tech that will let him immediately translate between any languages. It's all telepathic stuff. So the woman says like, oh, you have to help. We were transporting back to the homeworld, but then they got free and they killed Captain Boltstar. And Adam's like, that's probably your dead tiny little superhero out in the bloodstream. And Superman's like, yeah, thanks, got that. All right, who's they? And then all of a sudden, these two creatures emerge, and one of them is super big, and he just punches down Superman and says, we're the ones who did it. And so this other guy comes out, he's got a giant hammer, and the woman introduces them as Dr. Smashhammer and Titan Super Gladiator, the greatest criminals of the Empire. And Superman's like, I'm sorry, did you say that guy's name is Dr. Smashhammer and Titan Super Gladiator? And Palmer's just like, that's probably a translation thing. Like, it's approximating where it can. So Dr. Smashhammer comes after Palmer. Palmer has some swords that he learned how to fight from Frankenstein, and Superman's fighting against Titan Super whatever. But we see that he manages to get off Superman's shrinking belt, and because he's the one holding on to it as something has happened, it immediately starts growing Titan back up to normal size. It gets him out of the body, but he starts growing up to normal size. And it's just like, all right, that's a problem because that dude's going to be normal size out in the world where Batman is in a coma. And we do see him come out and he looks over at Batman. He's like, oh, this guy's got like a whole crown thing going on with the cowl. I bet he's the king. Well, there's only one way to take the throne from the king. And he goes to like crush Batman's head. So Palmer is still fighting against Smashhammer. Superman just comes in, throws a single punch. The dude's up against the wall. Smashhammer throws his hammer against Superman, and it does seem to actually hurt him somewhat. So then Superman just uses his heat vision to incinerate the hammer and just totally destroy it. So Superman grabs the guy and is just like, all right, well, that's enough of you. Tosses him aside and says, hey, if that's all taken care of, we need to get back out and like deal with this. And Palmer's already like, oh, way ahead of you. I'm going to shrink down this city that is inside of Batman smaller so that it'll fit inside of a tiny little shade like ball thing that we carry around entire cities in. And then we're going to grow back up to normal size and we'll help Batman and get him out of here. So all that's taking place. He gets back up and out. Meanwhile, before they can, the guy's coming after Batman, but because they have already shrunken down the city, Batman comes out of his coma. He sees the guy coming to crush his head, and he's like, who the hell are you, and why are you in the fortress? And then he just beats the ever-loving crap out of Titan. Like, it's not even a fair fight. Batman's just 100% on top of it. So Superman and Palmer start growing up and just being like, oh, geez, man, this is, like, crazy. The city is shrinking as we're growing. Are you sure we're going to be able to transport it out of here? And just like, yeah, no problem. Like, but also things are getting a little bit hectic because Batman must be awake now and he's getting into some sort of fight. So we definitely need to get out of here now so we can help him. So they start growing again. They get out of there. But Superman's like, wait a minute, hold on. I lost my belt. Am I able to grow again? And Palmer's just like, no, you'll be stuck here for all of eternity. There's nothing I can do, Superman. Superman's like, what? Seriously? And he's like, nah, I can grow you. It's no big deal. Superman's like, that's not funny, man. Don't do that to me. So both of them grow back out. They come out of Batman. They're ready to fight Titan, but Titan's already down on the ground. Batman took him out. And Palmer starts to introduce himself, and Batman's like, I know who you are. I know everybody. What were you doing inside my body? And just be like, oh, there was like an alien city thing. Don't worry about it. We got it all taken care of. And Batman's like, this is why I never leave Gotham. So sometime later, Palmer's going to leave, and he's just like, yeah, don't worry about it. I'll take care of the city. It's going to be safe. And Batman's like, I don't know if we trust Shade to be in charge of an entire microscopic city. Palmer's like, this isn't Shade. This is me. If you trust me, I will take care of it. And Superman's like, I trust you implicitly. You're a good man, Palmer. And Palmer, as he's walking away, is like, by the way, Superman, I actually have been thinking of a code name. You can call me the Atom. And Superman's like, I like it. The Atom. Nice one. So as he leaves, Superman and Batman are like, hey, you remember how there was a shrinking lady in Forever Evil who was named Atomica? She was evil and she caused that whole thing. You sure we should be trusting the Atom? And Superman's like, yeah, no, like everything's fine. I'm sure he's perfectly safe. Then cut to inside of Shade headquarters, and it turns out Father Time and the people in charge of Shade have planted sensors and bio readings and stuff all over Batman and Superman, so they can now track absolutely everything they do. So, is the Atom to be trusted? Probably not, but whatever. It's a nice little one-off. I mean, it's super simple, super easy. I think it's more for Atom fans than it is for Superman or Batman fans. That being said, it does have a pretty solid because Batman moment where he's able to take out just this absolute brute of a, I guess, technically alien with absolutely no problem at all right after coming out of a coma. So yeah, not a bad story. Definitely a solid little one and done. I'll give it I want to say 7.5. I'm going to lower it down to a 7 because there was something about the art. I don't know which of the artists it is, but like something about Superman's face just looks really off to me for like most of the issue. Everyone else looks fine. The Atom's a little bit worse for wear, but Superman specifically is just something's wrong with him. So I got to bring that down to a 7 when it's like half of the main cast just doesn't look right to me. But still, solid read if you're up for it. Aquaman and the Others, number 2, written by Dan Jurgens, art by Lan Medina. So last issue, we had a whole big thing of, the gold trinkets or whatever for the others. None of them are working. And then there was a sister who was able to see the fact that Future's End was going on in the future. So a whole bunch of stuff happening. Meanwhile, we cut back to thousands of years ago, after the King Atlan stole the gold from the alchemists or whatever. One of the alchemist's sons comes in and just like, Father, who did this? And it's like, King Atlan, he stole our gold, but like you're going to get it back. I'll guide you to the scrolls so that you can take it. And so he dies, and his son's like, oh, I will avenge you. So last issue, we had the plane that was by the operative was knocked out of the sky. Everyone starts falling down into the ocean below, and they're like, okay, so we're like definitely gonna die. Nobody here has the ability to fly, so like, what ideas do we got? What are we gonna do here? And whatever her name is, the Sky, that's it. She opens up a portal to the ghost realm, and it's just like, all right, gravity's different in there, everyone into the portal, and then we'll be able to survive there. So they go into the portal. They watch through the Deadlands as the plane crashes into the ocean. And it's just like, okay, that missile came out of nowhere, so who's up on us? Like, why are we being attacked like that? And immediately, the prisoner of war guy is like all in on like, oh, this is a realm full of ghosts. I have my own ghost, but you're able to leave yours behind, whereas I am not. Thus, my journey continues. And it's like, all right, buddy, whatever. Just tone down the poetry for a while. So they open up another portal and end up getting out onto the wreckage of the plane. Aquaman's like, all right, I'm going to go take a look around. Everyone else just chill. Operative's like, all right, if we could all please get off the plane and over to mainland, I'm just going to blow up my stuff real quick so that nobody else can get it. And he's just like, are you serious? Why? Was it really better to be blown up than in the hands of an enemy? And he's just like, yes, absolutely. So this entire time, Operative's been really hard on Sky. So his nephew Aaron is just like, or maybe grandson, is just like, why are you, she's cool. She just saved us. Why are you so mean on her? And just like, because she's an amateur. She doesn't know what she's doing. She's just pulling this out of her ass. Meanwhile, Sky is seeing the ghost of Kahina, who was the woman who originally held her artifact, and just like, hey, yeah, no, look, I'm a ghost. I am supposed to have moved on, but I need you to go help my sister. She's at like this specific location, and everyone thinks she's crazy, but she's already been attacked, so you got to go save her. And she's like, all right, cool, can do. So as they're leaving the ghost realm, Sky's leaving with, like, talking to Kahina, we see that Volstock, who was the person who originally had the, like, golden helmet, is also there. They just focus on him for a second, and then nothing. They don't, like, reference there, but he's there. So if that comes up, his ghost is still around. So she comes out, Sky comes out and starts talking to Prisoner, and it's just like, hey, by the way, I can see your ghost too. You really should let them go. And he's like, I can't. Don't you understand? These men died under my watch. I'm beholden to care for their families and such. And Operative's like, okay, but like, I've also seen war and had men die on me, and I got over it. You might want to try to do that too. And he's like, I can't. Don't bother me. So, yeah, at that point, Aquaman comes back up. He's like, hey, everybody, sorry to interrupt, but we should get going home. And that's where Sky comes in and be like, oh, right, by the way, I met the ghost of our former teammate. She said we need to go rescue her sister. I have an exact location. And Operative's like, of course you do. All this ghostly mumbo-jumbo, I don't believe a word of it. And Prisoner's like, you believe I have ghosts, right? And he's like, I believe that you have ghosts, but I also partially think you're mentally ill with PTSD. And he's like, how dare you? So at that point, Aquaman time's up. He's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Okay, hold on. We're a team. Sky, what did Kahina say? So we cut over to Trezigstan, where Kahina's sister is just held somewhere. She all of a sudden gets a psychic vision of herself with a knife at her throat being held upside down. And she's like, oh no, something horrible. Meanwhile, this blonde woman comes in. I don't even know what her name is at this point. Daria. She comes in asking for her brother Anton. She's got little servants who are carrying tons of boxes, and she's like, oh, I'm back with my fall wardrobe. And she comes across the sister, who, I guess I should find the name of her real quick. Saya. I'm going to pronounce it different every time. So she comes across the sister just screaming, saying like, oh, future's end, future's end. And then she uses some sort of telekinetic power she has to lift up this woman, and she's like about to kill her. And then Anton comes in, just be like, don't, we need her, she's important. And he's just like, all right, fine, fair enough. So Anton says that she's the key to getting all the Atlantean relics. And so Daria's like, all right, whatever, you do what you got to do. And she just throws Saya aside, and Anton goes to comfort, being like, are you okay? I'm so sorry about my sister. And she's like, New 52, Future's End. And she's like, right, yeah, totally, that's a thing. Anyway, could you maybe help us find those like special relics and whatnot? And he's just like, oh, I don't know about that, but I see these horrifying images all the time of a series that goes on weekly for 48 straight weeks. And just like, right, totally. So they lead her into this back room, and the voices over like an intercom are saying, show her what we want. So apparently the voice on the intercom is Anton and Daria's grandfather, and Saya is basically, she's just being straight up told like, okay, look, all of these people, and we see like a portal vision thing that shows Aquaman and the others, says all these people stole something that rightfully belongs to us. We would like it back. Can you please tell us where they are? And immediately she's like, that's Aquaman. He's cool. They would never steal. And just like, all right, fine, whatever. You're not going to work for us, so be it. So they just immediately toss her aside and like say, you're no use to us. So meanwhile, the others and Aquaman are traveling via one of Operative's submarines to this location that Sky knows about. Prisoner of War's getting sick, because why not? And then all of a sudden there's this huge storm that blasts them up out of the water and crashes them down on the rocks. Everyone's fine, but the submarine is a little bit ruined. And it's like, well, we made it, but what the hell was that? What got us out of the water like that? And he's like, oh, I don't know, but let's go deal with this. So as they start moving towards the island, all of a sudden the rocks start becoming giant golem creatures. And it's like, well, others, let us fight. And they start taking out all the things. Operative tosses his grandson a gun because he says, never be without a weapon. And we see that prisoner's like, okay, last time I tried to clang my manacles together, I didn't have enough juice. But because we've been hanging out for so long, maybe that's changed. And so he clangs it together, and it causes such a just massive explosion that all of the golems just disappear instantly. And in their place comes Daria, who's got a whole costume on now, saying like, hey, we want our gold back and you're going to do everything we say. And she conjures a portal showing Saiz being held up upside down with a knife to her throat, as was predicted in the visions. Cool. It's fine. It's an okay issue. It's not anything standout. I'm not going to say I liked it specifically. It's definitely just kind of moving pieces around and setting up what the actual big stakes here are. I can't stop coming back to the fact that this person with Future Sight is seeing nothing relevant to this story and is existing only as an ad for Future's End. That's incredible to me. That you would have a character who's just a walking, talking Future's End ad. That's, wow. So yeah, no, I mean, that's not the worst possible thing, but it's just so weird to me. Beyond that, I mean, it's, like I said, it's nothing standout. It's not the worst thing either. I would solidly put it at like a 6. Like it doesn't feel like it quite has a voice yet. It doesn't quite feel like I know what it wants to be. And for being Aquaman and the others, it feels a lot more just like the others with Aquaman, which for a team that I barely know anything about should not be taking that much of the forefront. So yeah, no, I'm just a little bit let down so far, but we've still got another 3 issues in this arc, so maybe they'll turn it around and make it so these people are a little bit more interesting. Not holding my breath, but maybe. Earth 2, number 23, written by Tom Taylor, art by Nicola Scott. Last issue, we had Green Lantern being resurrected, and he's pissed off, and then evil Superman came across Lois Lane in her new red tornado body, and is very shocked by that. So we pick up with him being very shocked by that, and he's got the other Kryptonian, who is Val, by the neck, and Lois is like, put him down, Clark. And he's just like, Lois, Jesus, yeah, sure, totally. And he sets him down. He's like, but like, you died, man. What's going on? Like, why are you still alive? And then all of a sudden, Lois is shot in the back by a bunch of parademons. And Clark is like, nope, not letting that happen again. So he just heat visions all of them out of the sky. Just 100% turns to dust. And Lois is like, Superman doesn't kill. And Superman's like, I'm sorry, you had to see me like that, but like, is this a trick? What's going on here? And he grabs Lois by the wrist. Val stands up and is just like, get away from her, you bully. And Clark is about to turn around and just zap Val. And Lois gets in between saying like, guys, cool it. Everything's chill. I'm going to go with him. You and Hawkgirl get to safety. Talk to Jimmy. Everything's going to be fine. So Clark takes off with Lois, and then Hawkgirl and Val are left with all of the parademons, to the point where Hawkgirl's like, are you going to fight them? And he's like, no, I'm not really up for that. And she's like, well, okay, well, you're going to have to. But so as the parademons start firing, he grabs Hawkgirl, throws her down into a ditch, and covers her body with his own impervious one. And then all of a sudden the bullets stop firing, and they're like, what happened? What's going on? And turns out Green Lantern shows up. Alan Scott just arrives, and Hawkgirl's like, I thought you were dead. And he's like, I was. I got better. Now point me at something I can punch, as he just takes out all the parademons. So Alan takes them back to the Batcave. Batman's like, what happened? It's like, Superman, Lois is with him, parademons. It's a whole thing. But like, they know the cave is here. They are definitely on their way. We gotta bail. So at this point, Dr. Fate stands up and he's like, Green! It's like, yeah, no, ignore him. He's rambling. Don't worry about it. But yeah, this is one of his prophecy things. So we cut over to the Kent farm, and Superman is landing with Lois, and they arrive, and Superman's just like, Ma, Pa, check it out. My wife's still alive. And Ma and Pa are like, that's great, dear. So happy for you. So back in the Batcave, Batman's just like, yeah, all right, there's nothing else in Gotham they could have been going for. It was definitely the cave. We got to get out of here. Lois is providing a good distraction. Val's like, she's not a distraction. And he's like, I know. It's just she was providing a distraction. Can we just get over it a little bit? And Jimmy then chimes in being like, hey guys, I know exactly where she is. The reason she said to talk to me was because she let me hack into her and I can now see through her eyes. So doing that, she's able to see where exactly Lois is. And Lois goes over and talks to Ma Kent, just being like, hey, Martha, your son kind of came back super evil. Are you okay? And Martha looks over and just be like, oh, yeah, we're fine. Don't worry about us. We're cool. So Clark calls up Bedlam and just like, hey, I'm spending the day at my parents'. I don't want any interruptions. Just letting you know. So he does say, you were right, though. The Bat is in Gotham. Go take him out. And as soon as Jimmy and crew see that on the monitors, they're like, we got to go now. We are out of time. This is not something where we can wait for Superman. Like, they're just sending another wave right now. And Alan stands up and he's like, guys, you don't understand. I can feel the earth. And the earth is crying out and it's in pain and it wants me to strike back. And this is where I need to make my stand. And everyone else, Batman especially, is just like, okay, well, that's cool for you, but the rest of us, most of us, mortal. So we're just going to bail if that's all the same to you. So Batman initiates the Azrael protocol, and someone asks, like, what's that? And he's like, you don't want to be here when it happens. So Jimmy sees on the cams, an entire horde is arriving, including a giant warhound that just busts down the wall of the Batcave, and the huge battle begins. So they call in for an extraction ASAP. We see Red Arrow jumps in between of Dr. Fate and one of the, like, rats attacking him. And Red Arrow's like, oh, yeah, you have all these prophecies, and yet you couldn't just tell us that these guys were about to attack. And Dr. Fate just turns to him and just be like, I don't see you in the future. He's like, I'm sorry, what? What about me not being in the future? So all of a sudden, warhounds start attacking Batman. Red Arrow fires off an arrow into his eye. And then as he's protecting Batman, he gets bit in the neck. Super bloody. He's down on the ground. There's nothing anyone can do. Red Arrow is dead. Geez, Dr. Fate, could you give us a bit more warning next time? So Sandman suddenly appears with a portal. He's like, all right, everyone in, let's go. So everyone starts piling into the portals one by one. Finally, it's just Green Lantern, Batman, and Hawkgirl. And as Batman goes through, Green Lantern's like, hey, I need you to stay back and help me out here, Hawkgirl. And he's just like, what? This place is going to blow up. Like, there's literally a countdown starting at 10, like right now. Are you sure you want to stick around for that? And he's like, I got a plan. Please stay. And then all of a sudden, nuclear explosion. And theoretically, they're fine. They're on the cover for the next issue. So I'm sure they're fine. Beyond that, it's a solid one. I think I'm a lot more interested in the idea that Clark is, like, gone back to his childhood home despite the fact that he is super duper evil right now. I want to see that play out more. Like, I know I could just read Injustice if I wanted that, because clearly that's part of it, but, like, I really want to see how this plays out in that regard. Other than that, the rest of the stuff's fine. Green Lantern being back in play is nice. I like how they're using these characters to their full potential here. Like Jimmy being a computer hacker allows him to hack into Lois, and then Lois being herself. She also has red tornado powers. There's just a whole bunch they're using to their full potential. So all in all, I'm going to give this issue, I'll give it a 7.5. I enjoyed it. I think it's pretty good. Beyond that, yeah, just looking forward to the next issue as always. Green Arrow number 31, written by Jeff Lemire, art by Andrea Sorrentino. So last issue, the whole battle with the Outsider started and Robert Queen took an arrow to the heart. So he ain't doing so hot, and this issue picks up with him still not doing so hot. So Oliver and Shadow are standing over top of Robert, and Robert's just like, hey, Oliver, I'm not making it out of this. You got to go be Green Arrow. Take Komodo out. Don't let him get away. Bye. And then he's like, I'm not leaving you, Dad. And then his dad dies, and it's just, he's upset, understandably. So he stands up, he grabs the totem arrow, and he's like, all right, Komodo wanted this so badly, I'm going to give it to him. And as soon as he picks it up, all of a sudden he gets this burst of perspective. He has like dozens of panels. We see them all spread out all over the place. And he comes back to, and he's just like, okay, I'm good. Yep, I'm fine. Don't worry about me. So we cut over to Katana, who, leader of the Sword Clan, is fighting against the Fist Clan. Lady Onyx is leading that. And they all hop onto a boat, or at least the Fist Clan does. And she's like, I'm going to take the boat to where it needs to be to launch the final part of the Outsiders plan. You guys hold off Katana. So they, with their fists, try to fight against Sword Lady. Goes about as well as you can expect. She just cuts off all their hands pretty easily, but the ship has managed to take off. And so Katana calls Magus and is like, hey, the ship's leaving. What's going on? It's like, oh, well, that's going to be the final part of their plan. You got to stop the ship. Go for it, Katana. So she jumps off the pier, manages to grab hold of the ship, and pulls herself up. And that's where Fist Lady Onyx is like, you have the totem sword. You are leader of the Sword Clan. You can join us and join us in the Outsiders' reign. And she's like, nah. So they're about to fight with her fists. Katana sword and her fists. So we cut over to Shadow and Emiko, and Emiko's just like, well, was that guy who just died really my father? And she's like, yes, he was. Komodo lied to you, and he stole you from us, and I've been trying for so long to get you back, and I'm so sorry for all of this. It's just a mess. And Emiko's like, why would he lie to me? And he's like, I don't know. He's a dick. He's just evil. I'm sorry. And so they hug each other. Rain starts coming down, and Emiko just starts bolting down the street. And Shadow's like, where are you going? She's like, I'm going to kill that guy. He killed my dad. So we see Oliver walking down an alley. An arrow comes down and pierces his bowstring on his bow. And Komodo's just like, you're too late. Onyx has already started. And the Outsiders are going to rise up. And he swings in to be next to Oliver. And he's like, I killed your dad, didn't I? He's not coming back. And Oliver's just deadpan doing nothing. And he's like, oh, what's the matter? I usually can't shut you up. But he looks next to Oliver, and laying on the ground is just the totem arrow. He's like, gimme. So he reaches over and he picks it up. And as he does so, he gets that same sort of burst of perspective. And Oliver takes that moment to kick Komodo in the face, saying, you took the bait. And Komodo's just over on the ground feeling. He's just like, it's over. It's all over. And he's like, yeah, it's over. I got you dead to rights. And he's like, no, you don't understand. It's over for me right now. And then a arrow just pierces his heart. And Oliver looks who fired it, and we see Emiko there. And she's just bawling, like her eyes. She's super teared up. Meanwhile, we cut back over to the ship, and I'm just going to keep it brief for you. It's a whole fight scene, but Katana cuts off the Fist Lady's hand. Obviously. And she's like, you win. You've done it. Now take me, and you can do it. And so Katana's like, I cut off your hand. That's all I need. I don't got to kill you. So then Lady Onyx just jumps over the edge of the boat. We'll be seen again, I guess. And Katana calls it in, saying like, hey, I got the boat. Everything's fine. So we see some of the other quote-unquote good outsiders, like the Axe Clan and whatnot. They're all running. They go to where Robert Queen died, and Shadow's carrying his body, saying like, he's gone. Emiko went after Komodo. It's a whole big thing. And we see them all start running after where Emiko and Oliver went to. And Oliver basically calls out Emiko, just being like, he was dead to rights. Like, he didn't have his weapon. He was totally out of the game. You didn't have to kill him, Emiko. And it's like, he lied to me and he killed my real dad. And it's like, what about justice? And that's when Shadow and the rest of the crew come up saying, like, he deserves so much worse. Now, the outsiders were out of whack because of him, but now he's gone, and we can start getting the outsiders to what they're supposed to be, the shadowy organization that delivers justice from behind the natural realm or whatever. And Oliver's like, are you even listening to yourselves? You guys don't even know what normal is anymore. You are so corrupted and so messed up that you think that this is justice. This isn't. He should have been held accountable, not just straight up killed. And Magus is like, okay, if you think that there's a better way, the Arrow Clan was always about enlightenment and finding the true path. You are the leader of the Arrow Clan now. You can lead the outsiders. Show us the path that you want us to go down. And Oliver picks up the totem arrow. He's like, no. And he snaps it in half. And so he's like, I'm done with all this outsider bullcrap. Like, this was never anything that I wanted. All of this, I'm just putting behind me. But he turns to Emiko and he's like, look, I'm not going to tell you where you need to be. That's up to you to decide. but I am always going to be your brother, and if you would like to come with me, you don't have to deal with any of this outsiders crap either. I will raise you, I will treat you like my own. And Shadow comes in being like, he's right. Like, I'm not going to force you to stay here like Komodo did. I'm not going to, like, keep you bound up here. You choose the path you want. But if you stay with me, I am an outsider. That is the path I'm going to stay on. So I that's all I know. And Emiko doesn't directly make a decision right then, so Oliver's just like, all right, well, we're done. Magus, you do whatever you're going to do as head of the outsiders, but, like, swear to God, if you ever get my way again, I will put you down. And Katana's like, what do you want us to do with your dad? Like, your dad's body? He's like, bury him on the island. Clearly that's where he wanted to die anyway, so go for it. So then we cut back to Seattle, and we have Diggle talking to Henry and Naomi, and it turns out they got a whole plan here where they are using Mr. Talkman, Clock King, in order to set up a meeting with Richard Dragon, and they're going to just get the jump on him. So they got the whole thing set up. They've got eyes on every angle. They know the Talkman's men are inside of this meat freezer, which is where they're going to meet up. And Talkman's like, hey, Diggle, you made it right on time. Perfect. By the way, change of plans. And it turns out Clock King has betrayed Diggle. And we see stepping in behind with all the shotgun cocking is a whole group of villains that are here to take over Seattle. We have Brick, Dick Dragon, Red Dart, Killer Moth, and the return of Count Vertigo. And it says next time, Green Arrow versus the Longbow Hunters. So, Longbow Hunters, everybody. I mean, I love this arc. And I think it nailed the ending. I think it nailed it in the sense of, like, Oliver never wanted any of this. He had so much taken from him. He was lied to the whole time. And by the time he hits the end of it, he didn't want any part of it. Like, it would have been a betrayal to the character to say that he's like, yes, I will lead the outsiders and I will be this whole... It's like, no. He's a street-level hero who just wants to do good. Like, it totally makes sense that he is not going to lead this big conspiracy network of assassins or whatnot with all these different weapons. It's a straight-up good ending. And honestly, my one complaint I've had this whole arc is how they kept on cutting over to the Seattle stuff because it didn't feel like it was actually doing anything there. And while I still think that is a legitimate complaint for the issues that we already had, I think that this ending scene setting up the next arc, this is essentially just a post-credit scene. It's just showing, like, here's the villain collection. We've been setting them up very well over the course of this series, so... they're not a surprise when we get to them. So I'm down with it. I'm looking forward to seeing the next arc already. Green Arrow's been nothing but a blast. I'm going to give this issue an 8.5. Very, very good. Looking forward to seeing what comes next. Justice League 3000 number 6, written by Keith Giffen and J.M. DeMatteis, art by Howard Porter. So last issue, the Justice League's now reassembled. They tried fighting their way out of the prison planet, but then, oopsie, they got interrupted by 3 of the big 5, and the latest of which is Coeval, who is the big computer-based one. So, as they're standing down against Coeval, he's just like, haha, you cannot defeat me. I am a perfect being of technology and whatnot. And Wonder Woman's like, we're going to rip out your heart and feed it to you. Flash is like, we're probably not going to do that literally. And he's like, yeah, well, I'm not even going to give you the chance. And so he just teleports the Justice League away, just to a different location, and we'll see that later. But Kali's pissed off at that, just being like, hey, I was going to kill them. And he's like, yeah, that's why I got rid of them. Like, we can learn a lot from them, and we're going to torture them and break them, and we're going to get the secrets of resurrecting dead heroes like them. And then we cut back over to Cadmus World, where the twins are fighting. And look, I've been through 6 issues of this now. These twins fighting is always stupid. It just always is. So just to give the long and short of it, the boy twin is apparently knew that their communications were faulty. The girl twin says, you've sent them to their deaths. He says, we had to at least try, and besides, if they die, we can resurrect more. The girl twin's like, that's not good enough. And he says, the company thinks you're too not risk-taking enough. You gotta get with the program here. And she's like, oh, I know, but like, God, I wish that Dad was still alive. He had a moral compass. And then the boy twin says, yeah, well, the board of Cadmus World killed him, so he's not here anymore. That last panel sounds like it's interesting. That sounds like it's something, but like it's 2 full pages of, God, what were you thinking? I was thinking it was a good idea. It was a bad idea. So we cut over to Locus, who is the reality bender, and she's currently trying to turn the corpse of Green Lantern's body into some jewelry, where Coeval pops in just being like, hey, why don't you use your power? And he's like, she's like, I don't want to use my powers for everything. I was hoping to make this jewelry by hand, but I just cannot make this corpse look good on me. So he's like, oh, geez, you killed him? And she's like, yeah, totally, but, I couldn't let him go. So Coeval's like, look, do you mind if I just borrow him for a while? I just want to run from the tests. And she's like, oh, are you going to, like, tear him apart? And she's like, no, that's your thing. You tear them apart. I'm just going to run some tests on them to see if I can figure out, like, how they're resurrected and whatnot. And she's like, oh, well, he's dead. And he's like, when does that stop me? She's like, fair enough, but I'm coming with you. So she manages to teleport herself over to the planet of Idyll, which is the home of the 5. So we see each of the Justice League are currently locked up in cells. There's some guards outside who are like, these guys don't look so tough. We could probably take them down. That one's dressed like a bat. I don't know what a bat is, but it looks stupid. So we see that each of them are in kind of a catatonic state where they're doing a matrix. And inside of their minds, they are talking to a digital representation of Coeval. He's like, hi, hey, I have taken over your implants and like the stuff inside your body in order to get this psychic connection thing going on. And basically, I'm just going to talk to you and tell you, like, break down your wills and whatnot. And we cut between Batman, who's, piecing it together. Wonder Woman starts throwing punches, and he's like, that's not going to work. I'm completely just avatar of representation thing here. You can't actually punch me. And she's like, oh, whatever. If you get to talk to us, learn how we work, same goes for us. We can learn your vulnerabilities. And he's like, yeah, that sounds like a good plan, except I'm perfect and have no vulnerabilities. And he's like, oh, so an ego's your vulnerability. He's like, it's not an ego. I just am perfect. That's a fact. So and then we see Firestorm, and Firestorm's like, buddy, look, you can say whatever you want. I'm not with them. I'm not part of the Justice League. I'm here of my own accord. And he's like, but like, you were fighting off one of the 5. And he's like, yeah, I just wanted to test out my powers. I don't give a damn about what they're saying. And he's like, oh, so like if I made you an offer, like a good one, and joining us, and he's like, I'm all ears. Let's hear it. So then we cut over to Superman. He's given the same sort of offer. And Superman's like, I'll never take it. I'm Superman after all. And he's like, right, but do you remember like what they said about how you were resurrected? How that was through like dead bodies and whatnot? That doesn't seem very becoming of Superman. And he's like, I didn't have a say in that. And frankly, I don't like it. So you don't have the moral high ground there. And then Coeval's like, okay, well, what if I could make you more complete as a Superman? I definitely have the power to do that. And Superman's like, I'm interested. So we cut over to Flash, and Flash is like, bro, do you have any ideas how many times original Flash went up against someone who said, I can make your dreams come true? And then he just straight up beat the crap out of him. You're not going to be able to convince me otherwise. And he's just like, oh, yeah, no, I mean, I get what you're saying, but like, just listen, just hear me out. That's something the Flash can do, right? And maybe then you'll understand that I'm not the monster I'm made out to be. So we cut to the real world, and Locus is charging down to the cell where Ariel Masters is being held. She's got Hal's dead body in her hands, and some of the guards say you're not allowed to see her, and she's like, I'm going to teleport you back in times into your mother's wombs fully grown. And there's like, all right, please go ahead and check out Miss Masters. So she busts in and basically says, hey, you're the one who was behind the project, right? And she's like, yeah. And she's like, I want you to make me a better boyfriend. And she just tosses down the shrunken corpse of Hal Jordan. And she's like, I'm sorry, boyfriend. Is that Green Lantern? What did you do? And she's just like, shut up, get to work. I want to see him fixed. So she slams the door and runs off. Meanwhile, Green Lantern comes back to life. Turns out he wasn't killed. He was just faking it the whole time, because when Locus attacked her out in space, his Green Lantern energy that he thought was linked to his cloak, which was taken from him, still managed to spark. And he's talking to Ariel about this, and it's just like, how much of the energy must I absorb in order to make that work? And she's like, you idiot. The cloak was never your power source. The cloak was what channeled it. You're the power source. You're the one with the will inside you. And he's like, oh, seriously? That's cool. But what do you mean? Like, now I can't channel and stuff? It's like, no. See, the green energy inside of you is powerful. It managed to keep you alive, but it's so powerful that it's also killing you constantly. It's like a green cancer in your body. And he's just like, oh, well, that sucks. And she's like, yeah, no, definitely. Do not use your powers. And so Hal's like, oh, well, okay. So where's the rest of the Justice League? And it's like, oh, well, they're all being held in these cells nearby. It's like, oh, well, I got to break them out. It's like, do not use your power. Am I speaking French here? No, you can't do that. And he's like, I don't think you understand. I'm Green Lantern, and those are my friends. And they would want me to save them no matter what, because they do anything for me as well. And Ariel's like, I don't understand why you're only 6 inches tall, but you truly are Green Lantern. So at that point, we cut over to a meeting room where Convert and Locust are just sitting around waiting for Co-Eval to finish up. He's like, guys, this is going to take like a while. Don't expect this to be an overnight thing. I got to break down their spirits, and then I got to rewrite their brains. It's a whole long process. And she's like, fine, whatever. You're lucky that Khalid and Tenebro is not here. And Khalid's apparently off on a planet just killing everybody. So she's perfectly happy. But Tenebro, who we still have not seen, Co-Eval says, oh, well, he's everywhere, and he approves of my methods, so don't let that get to you. All of a sudden, there's an explosion down in the building below them, and they're like, what the hell is that? And Co-Eval's like, it turns out your boyfriend's still alive, Locust. And it's like, what? Huh? He was faking it? So then we cut down into the cell holding area where there's a giant smoky explosion, and we see Hal has managed to bust out the entire Justice League, and he says, hey guys, did you miss me? So, yeah, Justice League's now all back together. We were missing an Aquaman, but we got a Firestorm, and the rest of them were pretty normal. So, yeah, overall, I think this is a decent issue. We're now pretty much associated with what each of the 5 does and their whole shtick, obviously, except for Tenebro or Tenebra. I don't know how it's pronounced. Yeah, no, I mean, this book has been consistent. It hasn't been anything standout. It's very much been something that's a B or even C tier book, but it's consistently been what it has been. It hasn't tried to strive for anything more, and it hasn't fallen into anything less. So all in all, I think I would give this one just straight like 6.5 even, but it's not met with bad news. It's just exactly what I expect from it, and I'm looking forward to seeing how this sort of jigsaw of a future gets worked out. That being said, if I have to read the twins fight over the exact same crap one more time, I'm going to just tear some pages out. The Movement number 12, written by Gail Simone, art by Freddie Williams II. So this is the final issue of the series, and we open up in Coral City outside of Jose's Taco Heaven, where Holly, the true identity of Virtue, is taking a 15-minute break outside of her work. And as she steps out into the back alley, police officer Captain Mears, who of course found out her identity like 2 or 3 issues ago, is meeting her there, saying like, hey, Holly, you're a hard woman to find. And she's like, oh, Captain Mears, you finally put it together. How's it going? You here to arrest me? And she's just like, no, I'd rather not to. I want to believe whatever it is you're saying. And she's like, well, that's good. And he's like, so what was the plan? You know, you started the movement. What was the end game to it? And she's like, oh, you'll laugh. But it's like, I was kind of hoping that one day we'd, be fighting side by side with the Justice League. And we get a whole 2-page layout showing the movement fighting against all the big Justice League villains with the Justice League by their side. And Ollie continues saying like, yeah, I thought, we'd be part of something better where compassion isn't shown as a weakness and that it's okay to care about each other. And then we flash back to now, and she's like, I remembered I lived here in Coral City in the tweens where everything sucks all the time. And Captain Mears is like, look, the world isn't your responsibility. You're just a kid. And she's like, yeah, I don't think you understand the half of it. So she explains that her power set, and for those who don't remember, the identity of Holly was actually a dead girl, which the captain believes this other girl with these powers that calls herself Virtue just stole that secret identity. So when Virtue was 6, she got her family's powers, which is being able to see the emotional spectrum. Her great-grandmother had it, but whenever she used it, they tried her basically for voodoo and killed her. So when Virtue started showing her abilities, she wasn't able to control them. She started having like seizures and stuff like that. So her mom sent her away to Detroit, to where her aunt lives, and then she told her father that she died. So that's where the death thing came from. Meanwhile, 24 hours ago, we see Mr. Cannon, who of course has been kind of the overarching bad guy here. He's visiting his wife's grave, and he asks one of his bodyguards, a female bodyguard, whether or not they found the cop who is against the movement. And she says, yep. And he's like, well, great, let's get this started. So we go back down to the sweatshop, and we see Tremor and Virtue are trying to convince Mouse to follow them, and like he's like, oh, you're gonna make me take another shower, aren't you? I don't want to take a shower. And she's like, no, look, here's the thing, we can't have you crushing on Tremor because it's just not going to work out, so we're going to like redirect your affection elsewhere. And they introduce him to Margaret, who is a pet store owner who really loves rats, and she's super awkward, but she reaches into her bag and pulls out a wheel of cheese, and Mouse is like, I'm sorry, Tremor, I no longer love you. I love this woman, Margaret. Please try to forget me. And she's like, I'll do my best. Godspeed, good sir. So the rest of the movement, Burden, Catharsis, and Vengeance Moth are looking on. And Burden's like, I wonder if there's someone out there for me. And Vengeance Moth is like, oh, I'm sure you'll find a nice guy. And he says, oh, well, maybe I won't tell them about the whole possessed by demon things. And Vengeance Moth is like, oh my god, you actually have humor now. That's incredible. So all of a sudden, Vengeance Moth gets an alert on her phone. Someone's making their way down the train tracks that lead into their building, and they know it's Mr. Cannon and his bodyguards. So the movement get in the way, and it's just like, all right, you aren't welcome here. Turn around and leave. So Mouse sends his rats in. One of them gets hit by one of the bodyguards, to which Mouse is like, yeah, that was Mrs. Finnelmore. She was my favorite. So he starts attacking. The rest of the movement comes in, takes out their guns. Cannon's just like, Jesus Christ, you bodyguards suck. Look, here's the thing. I'm here to negotiate, all right? My son is the cornea killer, and I need you to capture him before he kills again. And we see that all the story is being told to the captain, and she's like, and you believed him, the obviously evil guy? And she's like, yeah, well, that's part of my power set, is because I'm able to see people's emotions, I eventually find something that I can latch onto and try to see the best in them. So we then get more of her backstory of how her father, when she was a young age, like caught her playing with another girl that she ended up liking and sent her away because the father just didn't understand. And so Virtue got pissed, but she wasn't able to control her powers, and she ended up sending her dad into the ICU for like several weeks. And that's where her mom came up with the idea of faking her daughter's death so that she would be able to get away from the father and also, you know, being able to live a normal life at the same time. So we then continue on with the story of Mr. Cannon leads the cornea killer, his son, out into the graveyard where his mother's buried. And he's like, do you know where we are, Terry? And he's like, yes, of course. I told you I didn't mean to kill her, mostly. But I promise I'll never kill you, Dad. And he's like, yeah, I'm sure. And that's when the movement shows up, and they're like, Terry, you're under arrest. You're for murder and whatnot. And we're going to take you to the actual cops, because that's what you deserve. And Terry's just like, oh, Dad, they must have followed me. Get behind me. I'll take care of them. So the whole movement goes in and starts attacking Cornea Killer. And it's just like, yeah, we figured he would be desperate, and we figured he'd be, you know, stupid and angry or whatnot. But what we kind of forgot about is that he is a killer. So as Mouse swoops in and starts attacking him, Mouse just gets his chest just cut open wholesale with a knife. And he looks like he is in bad shape. So Catharsis comes in. She gets knocked away by Cornea Killer as Burden comes up, and he sees how bad Mouse is hurt, so he turns full demon mode, starts attacking Cornea Killer. It's such an awkward name to say, Cornea Killer. I want to say Terry, but like I don't think I've ever known him as Terry before this. So at this point, we see Cannon gets on the phone, and he's calling Officer Witt, the cop who was let go because of all the evil crap he did with the movement. And Witt is standing behind the tree line with a sniper rifle, and as Burden is holding Cornea Killer up, we see him take a shot at Burden, shoot him right through the chest. And Catharsis sees the shot was taken, tells everybody to get down. She gets shot, grazing her side of her head. And that's when Cornea Killer goes full on new god. He's like, you don't understand. I can control the rain and the lightning. I am a new Olympian born. I am a god. And that's when Virtue sees him using his power, and he's like, that's messed up. And I almost believed him. But then as Virtue goes after Cannon, the older one, the Officer Witt goes to take the shot, and the shot would end up killing Mr. Cannon as well, which Witz is like, whatever, I don't mind. But Cornea Killer sees this. He is so defensive of his father that he jumps in the way of the bullet and ends up taking the shot in the head. So he's killed. Vengeance Moth takes Witt and just throws him off keeps him off to the side. He's definitely gone. We see that everybody did end up surviving except for the Cornea Killer. Like all the rain stops falling and everything turns off. We see Virtue is trying to reach out to feel the emotions of Mr. Cannon, but she's just so overcome with the grief that he feels that it's just too much. So at that point, we get back to the story, and we have Virtue saying to the cop, like, okay, are you going to arrest me? Like, and he's like, what, for almost getting shot? No, that's not a crime. I'm going to go get some donuts and a milkshake. Would you like to join me? And she's like, I don't know. You were still the cop that killed my father. And he's like, you got it. Like, if we're sharing the truth here, your dad had a gun. I didn't know it wasn't loaded, but he aimed it at me. It's what had to be done. I hope you can understand that and forgive me. And she's like, I do. Like, I get it. It's more so I don't forgive myself because he only ever did it because he never got over my quote-unquote death. So, yeah, it just hurts no matter what. And that's where the captain comes out and says, like, hey, I don't really get to see my daughters that much. Maybe I can check in on you time to time, if that's all right. And she gives him a big hug and says, yes, that'd be awesome. So at that point, they go their separate ways until she's done with her shift. She goes back inside. And the captain says, like, hey, by the way, I do think it was a little bit silly. Like, you were never going to change your mindset enough to fit in with someone like the Justice League. And she's like, oh, yeah, no, we definitely weren't. They'd have to change to be able to fit in with us. And that's where we end, of a nice little heartfelt moment where they were able to stand by their moral guidelines and do the right thing. I like this series. I like the concept of this series, and I like the ideas that it was playing with. I just wish it either did more or had time to do more. It felt like it really wanted to play with some of the social issues that are still dogging America, like wholesale. But it just didn't go all the way. It always took this little half-measure thing. Instead of saying, like, yeah, no, the people should be able to protect, like, themselves. We shouldn't have this institutional thing going on in terms of power structures and whatnot. It instead decided to do this half measure of, well, what is the right way? Instead of just committing to the one side. And don't get me wrong, there's a place for that story, but that's the rest of comic books. All of comic books is saying the institution is right. The people with power deserve the power. I wanted to see the alternative to that. So yeah, it's a good series, but it's definitely not for everybody, and I do think it kind of didn't live up to its own potential. So overall, I'm going to say this one is I'll give it a 7. I think this last issue is possibly one of the best. It does a good job of wrapping things up while still keeping things very neat and tidy for an ending, but it just kept on missing that mark that I wanted it to hit so badly. Teen Titans Annual Number 3, written by Scott Lobdell, art by Kenneth Rocafort. This is the official finale of Teen Titans. Jesus Christ. So we open up 8 hours from now. Red Robin is curled up in a corner, clearly injured, along with a bunch of other Titans sprawled around him. And he basically says, like, oh, this is Red Robin of the Teen Titans. If you're hearing this message, it's too late. Oh, I never should have trusted someone who's done such horrible, horrible things. But I had to try to fight up until the very end. I'm so sorry that we never became a stronger team. Goodbye. And then we hear the voice from off screen saying, like, oh, it's not your fault, Robin. Your destruction was always fated. And then Red Robin stands up and he wipes the blood off his face. And he's like, the only thing that's fated is I'm going to kick your ass. So we cut back to now, where we see, as of issue number 30, the yacht that was their Teen Titans headquarters has exploded / caught on fire. And Tim Drake's looking out of it like, I really hope that Bruce expected this to blow up when I commandeered it. So we see Cassie comes up on a motorcycle, and she's like, hey, I thought I could surprise you. And he's like, look, I feel like this is all just ending. I don't want to talk about it. And she's like, I don't know if you're talking about the Titans or your kind of pseudo relationship with me, but hey, let's talk about it. So he's like, you didn't even ever want to be a Titan. Why do you care? And she's like, what? Because I didn't want to be called Wonder Girl. So sorry that I don't want to confuse myself with Wonder Woman, who I've never met before. Look, the Teen Titans, yes, they went through some crap, but we did a lot of cool stuff, like fighting Trigon, facing down the Joker, the culling, to which Red Robin's like, also we lost a lot of things, like the culling. And she's like, yeah, all right, well, we can only do what we can. And we see, basically, she offers a ride to Red Robin's like, all right, look, where do you want to go? I'll drop you off there. And she's like, no, I'm good. Besides, I'm waiting on somebody. And then out of the water comes Skitter. And Skitter's like, hey, I was asked to lend a hand down in the wreckage of the ship. This is the only thing that I could find that was still operational. She pulls out a little tablet, has a big warning sign on it. And Red Robin's like, uh-oh. So then we cut to Chinatown an hour later, where Raven is entering into the restaurant, and she's like, oh, I shouldn't be here. Everyone looks so happy. I should just go. And as she goes to leave, she bumps into Bunker. And Bunker's like, oh, hey, Raven, what's going on? Mind you, they're all in their civvies. And he's like, oh, hey, Bunker, I was just going to leave. I shouldn't be here. And he's like, why? Because you're the daughter of Trigon, and you were specifically put on this team to try to bring us down from the inside. She's like, you knew about that? And it's like, yeah, of course we knew about it. You're the daughter of Trigon. Red Robin only kept you on the team because we wanted to keep an eye on you. And she's like, but despite all of that, you still trust me now? And it's like, yeah, of course. We forgive you. You're cool. And she's like, oh, well, awesome. Cool. Glad I could be part of the team. I will gladly join you then. So we then see moments later the entire team, all in their civvies, is sitting down with Red Robin, and he presents the tablet and says, all right, somehow Harvest has returned. And everyone's like, oh, God. So that turns out a little tablet's a thing that's just basically meant to flag anytime there's a sighting of Harvest. Turns out he's in Africa, and he started a new colony. And so Tim Drake immediately lays down saying, clearly he wanted me to find him. He wouldn't have shown up this easily otherwise. This is definitely some sort of trap. What do you guys say? And they're all just like, oh, we're totally in. Let's wrap this up. Our series is ending. Let's get that stupid-ass villain off the table. So they all get into their costumes, and then they're just hanging out into the restaurant's kitchen. And someone points out, like, hey, why are we just in this kitchen? I think it's Beast Boy. He's just like, well, shouldn't we be going to Africa? And Red Robin's like, oh, you see, this is the ending of the series. So we're going to bring back some old fan favorites. And he opens up the door to the outside alley. But it turns out it's not just any alley. It's Danny the Alley, formerly known as Danny the Street, which he's recovered now. And all of the old school Titans recognize it. Meanwhile, Raven and Beast Boy are like, what the hell's going on here, man? So Red Robin says, hey, Danny, we need you to teleport us over to Africa. Here's the coordinates. And Danny does so. And immediately they're just like, okay, right through that door is Harvest Colony. Is everybody ready? Everyone gets in their battle stuff. They knock down the door. And then on the other side is basically just like a university campus. And it's just like, well, this is weird. So they start looking around. There's just a bunch of kids just hanging out, chilling. We see Lilith, formerly known as Omens, just wearing a school uniform, just like, hey guys, how's it going? And it's just like, what in the hell is going on here? And it's like, also, what about all the kids who died in the culling? And then we cut over to Artemis, who died in the culling. And she's like, here I am. I was brought back to life because of high-tech stuff that the Colonel had. It's no biggie. And then a little kid runs up to Beast Boy saying, hey, it's me, Ridge, from the Ravagers book. I was killed brutally by Deathstroke, but now I'm alive again, and I no longer look like a giant dinosaur. So all the Teen Titans are like, this is the weirdest possible thing that we could possibly be doing. So they all go inside the building. They meet up with the dude, honest to God, I don't remember his name, but he was the one who was in charge of Nowhere and had like shadow powers. And he's like, oh yes, the Colonel will see you now inside the office, but only Red Robin. And everyone's just like, nah, not a chance, man. We don't trust you. You were definitely like in the leadership of Nowhere. And he's like, but check it out. I don't have parasites anymore, so I'm totally cured. And Red Robin's like, it's all right, guys. I guess. It's whatever. So he makes his way back in the room and he meets up with the man formerly known as Harvest, but he's just like a shriveled up old man on life support. And Tim's just basically like, Harvest, is that you? And he's like, don't call me that. I have a life full of regrets. You see, in my future, I had to fight against a meta population gone wild, and I brought that back to your time, and I was doing anything I could to win, even kill. But then I saw the good in you children, and you convinced me to change, and now I want to use my future technology to create a better world for everybody. Is that so wrong? And Tim Drake's like, yeah, look, here's the thing. The whole reason that this book even started was because I tracked you down. So maybe by some extension, part of this is on my shoulders as well. Maybe you're not the only one to blame. Let me talk to my team. So everyone goes and talks to the team, and Tim says, like, look, he has a way to remove people's metagenes. If you have a metagene on the team, you can have it removed and you will be able to live a normal life. That is what he is offering. And then half the team's just like, okay, so he wants to get rid of the people who are only powerful enough to stop him. And like, that sounds stupid. Clearly he's still evil. And Tim's like, I'm definitely on that side. But Bunker's like, okay, but hold on. We forgave Raven. Like, what's to say that this guy hasn't truly changed as well? Maybe he deserves a chance. And it's like, all right, fair enough. Raven, you're more in tune with, like, this sort of stuff. What's going on? She's like, hold on, I'm scanning. And Beast Boy jumps in, just being like, all right, well, if we're waiting for an answer, I was literally in the culling. Screw that guy. Let's go take the fight to him. And at that point, Raven comes out and she teleports everybody down to a secret sub-level. And Tim's like, yeah, I told her to do this in case she found something. She's just teleporting us. Don't worry. So they all come down to this secret laboratory under the ground. And Bunker's like, well, that certainly looks ominous. And he points to this giant green DNA strand that's just in the middle of this room. And apparently they logic out that it is the metagene from all of the kids that he's taken the metagene from, combined into just one big super gene. And as they're looking over it, it starts to transform and attack all the Teen Titans. Skitter makes the point of saying, hey, everybody, stand back. Don't touch it. It could drain you. But I can hit it with this web power that I have from my mouth. And then she just goes blah, 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 all over the hand. It's a horrifying panel. And so they all start fighting against the hands. Eventually, some of them get grabbed and they get thrown into the next room. And that's where Robin records his message of like, if we don't make it out of here, I'm so, so sorry. So it turns out the person he was talking to in the intro was Harvest, who's now back in his gear. And he's like, come on, Robin, I was kind of serious. Like, yes, I'm taking away their metagene, and yes, I am still sort of kind of evil in a few ways, but like, the whole thing I'm doing here, I don't want to hurt people. Like, that's straight up true. If I don't have to, sure, why not? But I do want to get rid of everybody's metagenes. Like, won't that make the world a better place? And Tim points out, like, the whole reason I made the Teen Titans, the whole reason we were brought together is to fight you. So in a roundabout way, you're the reason that we were a team in the first place. And he's like, okay, sure, whatever. But like about my plan of like getting rid of metahumans, like me and you are the only two real, actual, honest to God humans here. So come on, human to human, let's do it. And he's just like, nah, you ain't human, man. You a monster. He's like, I'm not a monster. You just shut up. I'll kill you with my bare hands to show you how not monstrous I am. So at that point, his armor starts cracking, and it turns out Bunker made psionic bricks in between the Colonel and the Harvest armor to like explode it off of him. So the Colonel's now just a frail old man again. And he's like, I still have a chance. I'm just gonna go and absorb the meta DNA into myself, and I'll become the enemy in order to defeat the enemy. And Bunker and Red Robin just start leaving the building. Raven goes over. She's able to use her demonic soul self powers to just destroy the giant DNA. And Harvest is like, no! And everyone's like, oh no! It looks like Harvest is going to die in here. Anyway, and they all just like casually leave the building. So the whole place starts coming down. It explodes. And everyone's like, well, I definitively claim Harvest is dead. There's no way he got out of that one. But Raven points out, for what it's worth, I saw no evil in his heart. He genuinely believed he was doing the right thing. So then Robin turns to the rest of Teen Titans being like, well, guys, what do we do now? Especially all these kids who were brought back to life. Harvest has given them a second chance, a new chance at freedom, a life without meta genes. But like, what do we do for the Teen Titans? And then we get narration from Superboy. Not the Superboy that's evil currently going on in Superboy. The Superboy that died during the Return of Krypton event. Turns out he didn't die. Son of a bitch. He became the new herald for the Oracle out in space, which was a big rock monster that never once featured in this book. And he's like, yep, that's my job now. I see past, present, and future as the Oracle for the Oracle. But what about everybody else? Turns out Cassie went back to stealing because she just enjoyed it. But she's now got a roommate in Raven, so she's not alone. Bunker and Beast Boy went over to the Green Team, and they're trying to get funding from them for a new team idea that Bunker has. Kid Flash and Solstice are still out on a prison planet, and they're fighting against death every day. Skitter went back to Metropolis Star Labs, where she first got her powers, and Red Robin went back to Gotham and fought alongside Batman. And then there's just 4 full pages of, but despite the ups and downs and the ins and outs, the Teen Titans did their very best, and for a brief period of time, they were truly Titans. The end. This book relaunches in 10 weeks. I'm not kidding you. The end. And then they just do a new number 1 in less than 3 months. Okay. So let's just go over exactly what happened here. Literally everybody was brought back to life. Literally everybody. To the point of Superboy, who did not even die in this book, was brought back to life. Ravager's characters were brought back to life. And, like, Jesus Christ, I'm sorry. So much was packed into this, and yet it feels so just tacked on to the end of, like, oh yeah, I guess issue 30 didn't really resolve anything, now did it? Five. It's a 5. It's a 5. Here's the thing. I like the art. The art's pretty. I like the way that some of the stories are wrapped up. It actually did feel like he was trying to say something in terms of like, oh yeah, like Harvest and people can change, but like they can't at the same time and blah, 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 blah. Like, all in all, this was an annual that was just so unnecessary. And then having that little like, where are they now section, I've been fine with if it weren't for the page of Superboy. That's what set me over the edge. Add on top of the fact that literally everybody over the course of this run just came back to life. I can't. I just can't. I have lost the ability to deal. So that has been stripped from my metagene. Thanks, Scott Lobdell. So join me in 10 weeks when we come back to the Teen Titans doing probably the exact same stuff. Christ. Phantom Stranger number 19, written by Len Wein and J.M. DeMatteis, art by Fernando Blanco. So, last issue, Sin Eater attacked Superman, there's a crack in creation, Zoriel fell into a coma, and then Cassandra Kraft got attacked in her bookstore. We open up with that last plot, where we go to Cassandra Kraft's bookstore and we get narration from Madame Xanadu, who shows up outside and she's like, something here ain't right. And I'm here to investigate. And I don't know what's going on, but I'm checking it out. Meanwhile, we pass back over to Terrence 13's penthouse, where Zoriel is in bed, still knocked out, but he is just rambling in a weird, angelic language. And Terrence 13's like, all right, strangers, is there like literally anything we can do? He's just been gibbering for hours. And Terrence 13's like, I don't know, he's sick or dying or something. What's up? And Terrence is like, can angels even die? And just like, dude, I've seen weirder stuff happen, so sure, I don't know. Look, regardless, I don't know what's going on with him. I'll see what we can do. I'm just going to take a look at some stuff, okay? And he goes up to Zoriel and puts his hand on his head, and then Zoriel gives a little smile and calms down as Terrence 13 and him leave. And Terrence is like, okay, but like, why is there an angel here anyway? And Stranger's like, look, I don't question the plan anymore. Like, if he has a reason to be here, he has a reason to be here. So Terrence starts going on the computer. He starts typing stuff in about Sin Eater and whatnot. It turns out that Kraken creation that was affecting Superman very locally, there's another one. And it's over on the West Coast. It's out in San Francisco. And immediately, Phantom Stranger's like, that's where Cassandra Kraft is. I know it's her. She's definitely involved here. So he just immediately like lifts up out of the room. He's like, hey, Terrence, take care of Zoriel. I'll be back soon. Bye. And he's just like, son of a bitch. So Phantom Stranger appears outside of Cassandra Kraft's bookstore, and he can't stop thinking like, I don't know why I like this woman so much, but God, do I like this woman. And as he goes into the bookstore, he's immediately zapped by some sort of magical energies just straight across the street. And that's where Xanadu stands up and just like, sorry, should have warned you, magical force field. Couldn't get by it. So at that point, he's like, I'm sorry, are we friends? Like, I don't feel like we've ever met in books. And it's like, well, we're both immortal. Clearly, we must have run into each other before. So, yeah, I'd say we're friends. And so it's like, all right, well, what are you doing here? And he's like, you think you're the only person who could tell when there are giant cracks in creation? Yeah, no, it's ley lines and stuff like that. Clearly, this bookstore is at the center point of something crazy. So, Xanadu throws up a spell that allows them to get into the bookstore. And Stranger's like, I could have done that. Just give me a minute. I could have done it. And she's like, yeah, you're welcome. So they look around the bookstore and they realize there's no books, which is weird. But there is a strange dark energy coming from the back room. So they make their way back there and they immediately come across Cassandra Kraft surrounded by evil looking runes with green lights in her eyes, just like being held up in midair by nothing, and she's got a weird voice to her saying, welcome to the home of desperation. And Phantom Stranger's like, yeah, no, she's possessed, something bad's happening. So she's basically saying like, oh yes, all this ancient power in these tomes and whatnot, and all the energy on the ley lines, this will be where I crack open creation even wider. And Phantom Stranger's like, who are you? What do you want with my girlfriend? I mean, this woman. And he's just like, oh, you think you can demand us to stop? Check this out. And she sends all of the runes that are swirling outside of her after Phantom Stranger. And Phantom Stranger's immediately just like, why would somebody attack the woman I love? Unless it was for personal reasons. Son of a bitch, this is Sin Eater again. Why is it always Sin Eater? So Xanadu dispels the evil runes, and it's just like, hey, let's leave. And he's just like, right. So they just throw down a bunch of books on top of Cassandra, and that's enough to like take her out for a while. Meanwhile, in limbo, I mean, that's the best way to describe it. They say it's the realm just below heaven. We see all the souls that have not yet departed to heaven. They've still got some earthly attachment. And we see Sin Eater walking with the big Great Dane dog named Non. And the Great Dane is actually the leader here. He's the bigger entity. And Sin Eater's just like, when will it be time, Master? And Non's like, dude, this is your plan. You tell me when. It's like, look, the souls of Limbo are following me without me summoning them. It must be time. And Non's like, yeah, that sounds reasonable. Sure, go do your thing, man. And Non just steps up and he's just like, all right, look, I'm responsible. All of us are responsible for the Kraken creation. And all of us will pull heaven down to earth, so therefore we can invade and rule over both the realms. That's the plan. And Sin Eater's like, right, but like my part of the plan is I get to torture Phantom Stranger forever. And Non's like, yeah, bro, you do that. I really don't care. That is not my end game. You can have that. So we cut back to the bookstore and we see that Cassandra's energy or whatever has taken the form of a bunch of like spirit women or something like that. They grab hold of Stranger and Xanadu and turn into a mist that starts pumping itself into their lungs and killing them. So then Phantom Stranger and Xanadu reach up their hands simultaneously and they get a different mist to form that allows them to get rid of the evil mist. And it's just like, okay, but like for real though, we gotta leave. So they start running to the door. Xanadu sees that it's magically sealed, so she just blasts it open and they make their way outside. But as they go outside, they see the Kraken creation has gotten even worse. They see that the ground is cracking beneath them, which Stranger points out like, it's just San Francisco. It's no big deal. And she's like, yeah, no, clearly this is just a normal San Francisco quake, you freaking idiot. And then all of a sudden the bookstore starts raising up out of the ground, up into the sky. And Stranger's like, I don't know what the Sin Eater's final goal here is, but clearly the bookstore is powering the Kraken creation and like that needs to stop. So they both fly up to the bookstore. Cassandra's like, come back for a second round, eh? And Xanadu's like, all right, I'm going to go and absolutely kill this bitch. And Stranger's just like, hold on. Maybe I can talk to her. That worked really well for me in Blight. And she's like, nope, not going to happen. And she just starts zapping Cassandra. And Cassandra's screaming out in pain. And Stranger's just like, yeah, all right, this probably is necessary. I'm not going to fight against this one. Meanwhile, in Terrence 13's house, Zoriel comes back all of a sudden. He grabs 13's hand and says, tell him I always love... And then he just seemingly dies. No more is given context on that. So, meanwhile, we go back into the shop. Cassandra's still screaming from Xanadu's attack. It seems like it's almost done. But Stranger's just like, nope, I cannot let another person be lost like this. So he blasts Xanadu away, walks up to Cassandra and says, I don't know whether you're playing me or not, but like, I can feel you deep down inside. We belong together and I have to be with you. And Cassandra's like, yes, absolutely. We have to, clearly. Mind you, she's still possessed. So Stranger goes in and kisses Cassandra, which she did not consent to. So she starts yelling, no, what are you doing? Let go of us. And then turns out Stranger is able to absorb all of the evil energy inside of Cassandra, but because he's just more powerful or something, I guess, he's able to disperse the energy and close up the crack in creation that was above. So now the shop is just floating in the middle of space, I guess. So Phantom Stranger, he comes down, he's good. He sees Cassandra's waking up. He's just like, oh, yes, hello. Oh, you were here. I couldn't have done this without you, Cassandra, because your power added on to mine, and we were able to do this stuff. And then the Spectre shows up. He just pops into the room, and he's like, hey, you idiots. This was all just a distraction. Heaven is literally colliding with Earth right now. Phantom Stranger, you're with me. Let's freaking go, man. So, yeah. Whatever's happening there. Not a bad issue, just strange. Just a very strange one. Like, it feels like we're kind of doing this world tour sort of thing where we're just going to keep on introducing Stranger to other people that he probably should have met by now, but hasn't. So we got Superman, we got Xanadu, Spectre's up next, which obviously they have a history, so that's probably just wrapping that up. Because I do believe this only has like 3 more issues left. So we'll definitely see where we wrap up at. But, yeah, no, it's just a weird little issue. I'd say it's probably I'll give it a 6.5. It doesn't quite feel like it's 7 level. It just feels a bit too light in terms of what I expect from Stranger. But who knows? Some people could actually like that more than the heavier sort of like talk of God and stuff like that. But that's kind of what I want and expect from this book now. So 6.5 seems fair, and we'll see you next issue. Swamp Thing number 31, written by Charles Soule, art by Jesus Saiz. Last issue, Alec in the body of a human, because his own body was stolen by some con artist. He starts talking to this other woman who turns out to be another avatar of a different color. And she's like, yeah, no, isn't being in a human body cool? So we open up this issue with her avatar ability leaking out of her face, and it looks gross as hell, and she's just like, oh god, you're an avatar of what? I swear, I know about the rot, I know about the red, and I'm the green, so what the hell are you? And she's like, oh, I was of the mycos, fungus. If we had to pick a color, it would be the gray. And immediately Alec throws back on his pants. He's like, yeah, I'm not going to be doing that right now. But like, why did I never encounter the gray before? What's going on? And she explains, like, look, do you like my body? This is one of my favorites. I've had this body for quite some time now. And he's like, okay, yeah, I do. But like, what do you mean quite some time? It's just like, oh yeah, I've had tons of bodies and whatnot, but I've had this one for a while. And he's like, but I'm in this body and it's already falling apart. And it's only been like a week. It's like, I'm coughing up seeds here. And she's just like, yeah, no, but like the more you change bodies, the more you find new hosts, the longer you're allowed to keep them. This body I've had for like decades now, and I want to keep it pretty much forever. And he's like, how many bodies have you kept? And she's like, I lost count in the 16th century. And he's just like, oh my god. And she's like, look, they're almost always volunteers. It's not anything bad. And like, I left my post of watching over fungus to live out my own life because it's something I needed to do. And guess what? Fungus has been doing fine. And I think the green will do fine as well. So we cut to the research facility that took the parts of Swamp Thing. And they're like, okay, look, we've been feeding that like magic drug stuff into people. Hasn't been working out. They've been dying pretty quick. So what we're doing is we're cutting up the pieces of Swamp Thing. We're hollowing them out. And we're going to basically make a Swamp Thing cosplay outfit for them to wear while they're on the drugs. We think that's going to make it easier. And so they have a real-time feed. And they say, look, here's the plan. What we're going to do is we're basically going to change a few things as to how our seeds are produced and make them a bit more optimal. We're going to do that because we're in the big farm industry, not pharma, farm. And so we are taking this food stuff, we're doing that, but it's not enough just to have a good product on our own. So they have a live feed stream of a rival corporation's wheat fields, and they say, all right, check this out. And they start up the drugs with the guy in the cosplay outfit, and they watch as the rival corporation's wheat fields just decay. They're just gone. And it's like, we are able to generate demand now. So cutting back to Alec, he's like, okay, hold on. You've been using this system to like switch body to body for hundreds of years. Like, when was the last time you were even part of the Gray? And she's like, I don't know, like, it's been a while and I don't want to go back. Like, I now have another avatar to talk to. I want you to be able to like this as well. And Alec's like, but what about the people? What about their bodies? And it's like, well, like I said, they're almost all volunteers. It's not a big deal. And Alec's like, okay, all right, yeah, you know what? I'll play ball. And hey, you said that your avatar body's nearby, right? So maybe we could use your avatar body to host my soul, and then I can transfer over to a new body, and that one will be more permanent, right? And she's like, yeah, that's totally a thing we can do. I'd keep my body hidden, like my real body, because it's absolutely gross and disgusting, but yeah, let's go do that. So they go down into the basement of the building, and yes, it's gross and disgusting. It's absolutely horrifying, and she agrees. And Alec makes the point of being like, hey, your old body looks kind of masculine. Are you a dude? And Miki's like, gender doesn't really mean anything once you switch bodies like 17 times. And he's like, all right, fair enough. So at that point, Alec keeps it up, just being like, okay, put me in this body, and then I'll go out and I'll find like another suitable body to shift into. Okay? That sounds great. And so that's where Capucine steps in, being like, hey, this seems like unnecessarily cruel, and this doesn't seem like you at all, Alec. What are you doing? And Alec's like, this is the only way I can save the current body I'm in. Seriously, just roll with this. And she's like, all right, I trust you. So this process happens. Alec's soul is taken out of the body he's in, put into the fungal body, to which he immediately is just like, oh, God, this feels wrong. I don't understand what's going on. All right, Jesus, just try to control it. And he immediately turns over to the other guy, who was now, he knows, part of this like research facility that stole his body. And he's like, you, tell me everything you know now. And he's just like, oh, my name is Hans. I work in Germany, and I can show you where the exact location of the body is. And he's just like, yeah, no, absolutely. But tell me why they're doing it as well. And we cut over and we show the heads of like the departments and whatnot. They're talking to the C-suite, all the CEOs and whatnot. And they're just like, all right, look, we think that we have a lead with this. We don't know when we're going to be able to crack it 100%, but this is the potential that we're able to show now. And they show them images of all the wheat fields and stuff like that. And they're like, with your permission, we'd like to pump it up to 11, basically. And what that will cause is that we will be the only significant supplier of wheat. We will be able to feed the world, and we think that casualties will be within acceptable levels. So the C-suite mutter to themselves, and they're like, you have our permission, go for it. And it's like, cool, awesome, money. So they start decaying all of the wheat fields that we can see there. We see Alec in the fungal body starts moving through the gray, and he's like, this is so gross. Like, it's reaching out to me. The gray is screaming out because it's been so long since it's had an avatar. I'm now kind of realizing what I did to the green when I severed the bond with it. Definitely need to revisit that when I get home. But for right now, I just need to find a place to spawn up. So he looks for different locations of like mold and fungus and whatnot. And he comes across a moldy sandwich inside of the scientist lab. And he pops out of it and he's just like, where's the plant body? And immediately, the scientist is like, oh, it's down the hall to the left, Jesus. So guards start firing on him. And he's like, all right, I need to somehow use my powers. It's not about sunlight and warmth. It is much more about damp and darkness. So I just got to use that. So he sends out these spores to attack the guards and manages to knock them out. He busts through the door where the dude is still on plant drugs, and he picks up the pieces of his cosplay body. And he's like, Jesus Christ, what are you guys doing? And he takes the cosplay head off, and the guy's already dead. Like, mentally, he's just a vegetable, pun intended. And he's just like, I don't know who you guys are. I don't know what you thought you were accomplishing, but I'm taking my body back, and I'm burning this place to the ground in 3 minutes. He got that long to bail. And we see he's just got like a canvas sack that he has loaded his body up into as the building completely crumbles apart due to massive growth of fungus. So at that point, we see Swamp Thing has rearranged his body down in the transfer platform, and he's like, okay, put me back in that body. And the guy's like, I can't put you from host to, like, avatar body to avatar body. There's got to be a human body in between. And Capuchin steps up being like, use my body. I don't mind. It's only going to be temporary. And he's like, no. You got some weird immortality thing going on. I don't want to mess with that. It might mess up something. There's really only one choice here. And he turns to Miki, and it's just like, he wraps her up in a bunch of fungus-made vines and says, you need to get back to your job. What you have been doing, using innocent bodies for all this long, is unconscionable. How dare you? So he wraps her up and says, look, do this quick. Get me switched over into her body, then switch me over into the Swamp Thing body before she has a chance to get out of the fungus body and like get her bearings straight. So they perform the ritual super quickly. We see that the human body that Miki was a part of just disintegrates into nothing. And immediately she's pissed off in her fungal avatar body. She's like, how dare you? How dare you? She tries to kill Alec. And Alec just uses his much more strong, like, green powers against her. And just like, no. Look, we are not gods. People are not just vessels to us. You are a monster, and I swear to God, I will put you down if you ever do something like this again. You are the avatar of the gray. Do your damn job. And if you ever come up against me again, I will take you out. And she just hisses at him, and then Swamp Thing's like, all right, let's go. So we go back to Louisiana. We see Lady Weeds and the wolf are fixing up, or at least the wolf is paying people to fix up the burnt down house that Alec was in. And Lady Weeds is like, why are you doing that? What's the point? And he's like, I want Alec to owe me a favor. It's super good to have people on your nice side. And all of a sudden, Wolf's phone goes off. He answers it, and he's like, hello? And he says, oh, okay. All right, that's too bad. And he hangs up. And the implication here is Wolf was the one who was running the facility. He was the one who told the people where Swamp Thing could be found and how to take his body and all that stuff. And Weeds is like, what's that about? And he's just like, nothing, just one of my plans falling through, but I've got plenty more. So we then see, I think it's Brother Jonas is just sitting on the stoop reading a book, and he's like, it smells like sea salt. And he looks up in the air, and in riding a wave comes Aquaman, being like, where the hell is the avatar of the green? Because if you remember, back when Jason Woodrue had the powers, he kind of messed with the seas. So tune into Aquaman. I think it's going to be a crossover. I think it's in both books. Either way, yeah, no, this is a solid issue. I like the way they wrap it up. I like the fact that they introduced the gray. I mean, that's a whole new concept right there. And I think they gave a pretty convincing reason as to why it wasn't investigated before. I do think that that kind of comes down on Alec of like, hey, if all life is either animal or plant, like, you know, as someone who's a scientist, that fungus is not a part of that. Did you not realize as Swamp Thing you couldn't control funguses? But, yeah, no, beyond that, I think it's a nice addition to the world. It makes sense. Yeah, I enjoyed this issue. Top to bottom, I think it was a solid one. I'm going to go ahead and say that this one is a solid 8. And I look forward to seeing how the Aquaman crossover works out, because this has been a long time coming. Batman Eternal number 5, written by Snyder, Tynion, Fox, Lehman, and Seeley, art by Andy Clark. So This issue is kind of focusing on Tim Drake and what he's doing throughout all of this crazy, hectic stuff. And what he has decided to focus on is the kids that were involved in Professor Pig's initial attack. So we see Tim is looking at a hologram of them. He's with Alfred, and Alfred's like, hey, man, you're not in the Batcave. You got your own, like, Robin's Nest thing set up. And Tim's like, yeah, Batman doesn't like it, but I don't care. I got to do this stuff on my own because he's too overexposed. He's got too much going on. I'm focusing down on the small details here. And he points out that these kids that were infected with some, like, Professor Pig's serum or whatever, turns out that there were a bunch of other kids who were sick. And all of them came from this one building, and all of them were sick before the Professor Pig attack. So this is something else entirely. And we see that Tim is basically saying, all right, it's down in the projects, this building, so I'm going to go down to the Narrows and figure out what's going on there. So then we cut over to Harper Rowe's building. Turns out she lives down in the projects, and her brother Cullen is basically also sick. He's got the quote-unquote flu, but we see in his eyes that it's actually nanotech stuff, which Tim also figured out. And we see that Harper is like, hey, crazy stuff's going on in Gotham. I'm gonna go out there and see if I can help. And Colin's like, please don't. And she's like, too late, bye. So he's left there alone. We see back at the Gotham Gazette, we're following Vicky Vale. We get introduced to a new, like, intern reporter named, I think it's Joey Day. And immediately, like, he hands Vicky a report saying that her page views are down, and Vicky's like, you know you suck, right? You know you're part of the enemy, right? And this other more grizzled journalist comes up. His name is Warren Spacey, and he's like, look, Vicky, he's the new kid, don't take it out on him, whatever. And Joey is just happy to be there. He's like, yeah, well, let me know if you guys need anything. So at this point, Vicky's basically chewing the new guy out to Warren, saying like, oh, these new blood, they don't have to work for anything. They just show up and they do a listicle, and that's all they got to do to get published. I bled for my byline. And Warren's like, okay, look, if you're that serious about it, I'm an old geezer. I can't go out and do this stuff anymore. I'm going to point you in the right direction. You need to be investigating Falcone and the gang war that's coming on. She's like, what gang war? And she's like, you got to get your own sources on that. So go out there and take the new kid with you because you want him to get experience. This is how you're going to do it. So we go to Tim Drake, who's down in the Narrows. He's in the bedroom of one of these kids who's been infected. Batman's also there, and they just have a little talk together. Batman's basically saying, hey, tell me what you got. I want in on this. And Tim's like, don't worry about it. You've got your own stuff going on. I will take care of this. And he's like, okay, but you're a Robin. You're working with Batman. And he's like, yeah, and how well did that work out for the last Robin? Or Dick Grayson post Forever Evil? Or the entire family during Death of the Family? No thanks. I'm doing this on my own. But he does let him know that it is nanobots. There's a swarm of them, and it's definitely bigger than Professor Pig could handle. So it's definitely going to be his own thing. But at that point, we cut over to Batman. He's just like, look, there's stuff going on. I'm trusting you to handle this. Just like, please let me know if anything changes. And Tim points out, like, you do understand that something's like broken under the surface. Like, you're not okay as Batman, right? And he's like, this is about the city, not about me. Tim's like, yeah, exactly. So we follow Vicky and Joey. They have gone down to the Narrows, and they just go up to the biggest, toughest guys that they can find, and they're like, excuse me, sir, I've got $50 in my wallet if you can tell me anything about Falcone. To which the guy pulls out a knife and is just like, oh, you shouldn't be asking questions about that. So they're about to get stabbed. All of a sudden, a taser comes out of nowhere, takes the guys out. It's Harper Rowe, and she's like, come with me if you want to live. So she guides them down through the Narrows, seemingly to a safe place. Meanwhile, Tim Drake, he cracks open the nanobot code, and he's like, oh, okay, cool. I guess I could start seeing if I can command it now. And as he goes to do a command, all of a sudden the kid sits up in bed and he says, threat detected, eliminate threat. And this giant nanobot swarm emerges from the kid and starts attacking Tim Drake. So Harper gets Vicky and Joey back to her place, tells Cullen, hey, these people are being stupid, go make them some coffee. And Cullen goes to do so. Meanwhile, Harper and Vicky kind of have a little standoff of Harper being like, you were stupid if you thought you could deal with that down there. And Vicky's like, you're like 15, man. What are you yelling at me about here about stupid stuff? And she's like, I saved your life. And then all of a sudden her front door gets kicked in. And it's the same guys from before, and they've all got their knives. And as they are about to attack the group, all of a sudden Tim Drake comes in through the ceiling fighting against the nanobot swarm. And everyone's like, is he with you? Who's the kid? What's going on here? So then the nanobot swarm gets shot by one of the thugs, gangsters, whatever you want to call them. It turns their attention onto the bad guys, allowing Tim to get free. And Vicky Vale's like, oh, hey, you're Tim Drake of the of the Teen Titans. And apparently Joey has a photograph of him on his wall. And Tim's like, that's weird, but all right, thanks, cool. So at that point, Harper's like, hey, how are you going to handle this? What's going on? And Tim's like, oh, it's no problem. I've got the voice command settled out. And so he says, sleep. And the entire nanobot swarm just goes into hibernation. But then all of a sudden, Cullen starts reacting poorly. His nanobots come out, and they merge with all of the other nanobots in the swarm. Then he just consumes all of them and falls over and passes out. And immediately Harper's like, you did this, Red Robin. And he's like, I didn't, but I can fix this. I need to take a look at him. So they're like, all right, what do we do with the gangster guys? And it's like, just leave them. The police will show up. And Vicky's like, hold on, I got a better idea. She takes one of Harper's tasers, tases the guy, and says, all right, I think you got some answers for my questions now, Mr. Tough Guy. So Gotham Gazette publishes that a gang war is going on. And then we cut over to someone in Tokyo who says, oh no, the gang war's been found out. Young Mr. Wayne won't like this at all. And I should know, after all, I trained him, as he talks to a monkey named Maxwell with a bionic arm. I don't recognize this character. I'm sorry, I just genuinely don't. So, it's, it's again just kind of doing the setup stuff. Last time we had Batgirl, and we said, here's what she's going to be doing over the course of the story. This time it's Tim Drake, and we're exploring this idea of nanobots infecting kids down in the Narrows. Where did that come from? Where is it going? Cotton Eye Joe. I don't know. So, all in all, not a bad issue. I would say that while I think it has potential, it definitely seems like the most tangential storyline thus far. Everything else seems very rooted in we've got Gordon and the things that were related to him. And this is much more on the sidelines of and then this other stuff going on. So we'll see how well they can tie it together. But all in all, it's not a bad issue. I'd give it probably just a flat 7 and call it a day from there. New 52, Future's End, number 1, written by Azzarello, Lemire, Giffen, and Jurgens, art by Patrick Zurcher. Last issue, which is issue 0, despite the fact that it's very clearly the first issue, we had Terry McGinnis, Batman Beyond, traveling back in time to try to stop Brother Eye from taking over the world with giant robot spiders. He did go back in time, but he accidentally landed up several years too late. So we pick up 5 years from right now, and Terry's just looking over the Gotham and or New York skyline, just been like, well, my computer named Alfred, what are we supposed to do now? And he's just like, now, that's a funny term, depending on when you were talking about, it's a totally different now. And Terry's like, I'm sorry, but is this how normal Alfred talks? He's like, what do you mean normal? Am I not normal to you? He's like, never mind. Look, whatever. Can you just tell me when we are at this point? And Terry looks around and he's like, you know what? Never mind. We're 7 years too late. That's where we came in from. I can tell what's going on. And let me guess that because the time band was a one-time use, we're stuck here. And Alfred's like, yep. So Terry asks how this happened. And apparently it's based off of mass because Bruce Wayne was bigger. Terry was not able to have as much temporal inertia to get all the way back to the past. And so Terry looks at the cyborg that hitched a ride over with him, and he's like, all right, so what do we do with her? And then the thing just sits up and starts attacking Terry. So he's stuck in a fight scene. And he's like, Alfred, why didn't you tell me that this robot's still alive? And it's like, robot's still alive. That doesn't make any sense. The robot's not alive. It's a robot. And Terry's like, Jesus Christ, Alfred, you know what I meant. So he manages to rip out the robotic heart from this robot and say, yeah, now she's no longer functional. I guess that's what I should have said. So rips it off. And then meanwhile, we see a person across the street that is recording with his Google Glass in this strange alternate timeline, the entire fight scene going on. So outside of that, we cut to the carrier, which is the Stormwatch's home base, which is going through the space between universes. And then all of a sudden, they get attacked. Something's going wrong. And we see as part of Stormwatch now, we also have Hawkman and Mermaid, who you may remember from Frankenstein. They're all part, and there's like, oh, something's going on. Like, that's shouldn't be possible. We're outside of like actual universes right now. Nothing should be able to stop us. And Angie Spica, the engineer, all of a sudden, she gets overwhelmed from the system's control deck. She gets possessed by a different font, and the font says, oh, yes, you are Stormwatch. You were meant to watch for the coming storm. Well, here I am. I am that storm. And we see the ship is once again being attacked. All the defenses are being let down. The ship itself starts attacking against the group. We see Apollo is like, hey, something's going on outside. We need to take care of that. He goes out. Midnighter's like, hey, be careful. I got a bad feeling about this. And he's like, psh, I'm practically Superman. Don't worry about it. So he goes outside the ship. And he sees something there that gets a lock on him and says like, oh, he's a level 10 threat, take him out. And as Apollo starts describing what he sees, he's like, I see it, it's, oh my God. And then he gets just incinerated, straight up destroyed. So as the rest of the crew is struggling with what to do, the thing locks onto their ship. It turns on an auto self-destruct sequence. And as the leader, Jack Hawksmoor, is saying, you got to shut it down. It's too late. The entire ship explodes. That's it for Stormwatch. Cut to somewhere in North Carolina. There is a small suburban home where Grifter is making his way through a small suburban family. And by that I mean he is killing all of them systematically. Very brutally as well. Like multi-tap shots to the back of the head even when they're down. And he chases up this little girl with ponytails the whole way up the stairs as he walks up in his trench coat with his semi-automatic weapon. And he's just like, they cluster like they're human beings, but they're not. And I'm able to see them. That's my power. I'm the one who has to go and take care of them. And I know that they play this game where they pretend like they're real humans, maybe just to get me second guessing myself, but like I'm resolute. I will definitely not fall for their tricks. And as he busts into this room where the little girl is, she's crying, her tears are rolling down her face, and Grifter just aims the gun at her, and that's when it reveals that she's an alien. More specifically, she is a Daemonite, which is Grifter's whole ability thing. Or at least I think she's a Daemonite, because that is his whole ability, but they don't actually say it, and they don't actually show that she is a Daemonite, so maybe she is just some kind of alien. Either way, Grifter puts a headshot on her and then leaves the building just saying, yeah, this is the best job ever. So we go to New York City, where we see Jason Rush, one half of Firestorm, and he's trying to get Ronnie over the phone, just like calling him up. He goes to a clothing boutique where Ronnie's girlfriend works, and he talks to the person up front being like, hey, have you seen this woman's boyfriend? I think he's supposed to be here. And she's like, yeah, they're upstairs, but I don't think you should go up. And he's like, don't worry about it. It's important. It's a special extra thing. And he runs up because he's trying to get Ronnie. And then as he goes upstairs, wouldn't you know it, they were having sex. Ronnie and his girlfriend. And so Ronnie like goes over and like slams the door behind him and just like, hey, Jason, what the hell are you doing, man? And he's like, I've been calling you for 15 minutes. He's like, yeah, I was busy for 15 minutes. But the girlfriend's already getting dressed saying like, I don't need this. And he's like, great, awesome. Thank you, Jason. What could be so important? And he's like, we got a call from Green Arrow 45 minutes ago. He needs backup. We got to go take care of it. And so it's like, okay, so what? Like, we'll go, whatever. It didn't have to be that urgent. He's Green Arrow after all. He can handle himself. And he's just like, no, if he's asking for help, clearly he couldn't. So Jason initiates the transformation sequence. They turn into Firestorm, who's got a very updated look now. And Jason is just tearing into Ronnie inside his mind. He's just like, yeah, look, we became part of the Justice League after the war, whatever that was. And ever since then, you have been so hesitant and reluctant to like go out and do anything Firestorm. It's your duty, man. You're a hero. You need to be doing that. And Ronnie's just like, shut up, man. I got my own life to live. I don't want to deal with that. Don't put that on me. So as they make their way out to Seattle, so full cross country, they make it there pretty fast, and they see there's this huge fire, and it's where Ollie's lab used to be. So immediately, Jason instructs Ronnie very passive-aggressively to, like, put out the fires, rescue all the people, blah, blah, blah. And Ronnie's like, I know, all right, I may not have done this for a while, but I know the basics. And as he makes his way to some rubble, someone's like, there's someone underneath. I've been trying to free him for, like, 20 minutes now. It's not looking good. So Ronnie moves all the rubble off the body, and Jason is immediately laying into him like, this is your fault. 25 minutes. I've been calling you for 45, 25 minutes now. And as they uncover the corpse of Green Arrow, saying Green Arrow's dead because of you. So, yeah, Green Arrow's dead. I mean, here's the weird thing. Issue 0 was definitely all just set up. This is also just set up. Like, 0 was setting up the general concept, whereas this is setting up the specific plot lines of what are we going to follow? We're going to follow Grifter. We're going to follow Firestorm. Maybe whatever Green Arrow was up to. We're just going to follow these certain threads and see where they lead to. So while this is a decent enough issue 1 as well, of just setting up, oh, there's a big stakes. Green Arrow is dead because of this. The entire Stormwatch carrier was destroyed. We're setting up this big threat here. It is still just set up. So overall, I think I'm probably going to give this one 7 sounds too high, but 6.5 sounds too low. So I'm going to round it down just because why not? So I'll give it a 6.5. It's not that I'm disliking it already. I'm not. I think there is real potential here. But I do think that starting with the 0 issue and showing like, oh, what we're trying to avoid, and then coming back to this, there's nothing that just immediately grabs my attention. Like, I would like to know that there is a specific event, especially now that we know that Terry was too late. Like, what is this book going to be about if Terry was already too late, you know? I don't feel like we've set that groundwork enough. But I guess we'll see over the course of the next few issues where we're going to run with it. But yeah, I'll give this one a 6.5 and hope for better tomorrows. And that's it. That's all the comics that were published by DC Comics this May 7th, 2014. And I don't really have much more to add on to the end here. So if it's cool with you, I'm just going to launch into the end, if that's all right. You need to actually say it. You need to say it out loud. This is like a Dora the Explorer sort of thing. So, is it cool for me to launch into the end? Great. All right, so looking at comics coming out next week in no particular order, we have Batgirl, Action Comics, Superboy, Superman/Wonder Woman, Green Lantern Corps, Justice League United, World's Finest, Constantine. We got the 2 weeklies, Batman Eternal and Future's End. And then also we have a one-shot tying into the big old event that's going on across all the super books, which is Superman Doomed. So, yeah, that's the thing. Also worth noting, Justice League United technically is its number 1 issue, but they had a 0 issue. It's not a number 1. Just check out the 0 issue. That's where you should start at. Also, Superman Wonder Woman is part 2 of the Superman Doomed crossover. Action Comics is part 1 of the Superman Doomed crossover. Superman Doomed, I think, is like 2.5 or so. And then Green Lantern Corps is part 2 of the Uprising crossover, which of course began just earlier this episode with Green Lantern. So it's not like a packed week, but a whole lot of big event stuff going on because coming into summertime, DC just can't resist its events. So yeah, that's going to do it from me. Thank you very much for watching, listening, however it is you consume this podcast. If you have anything that you would like to add about the week's comics, last week's comics, anything at all, go ahead and hit me up on Discord, Reddit, or Patreon. There's also some other ways that you can do it, but I'm not going to tell you that. It's like a scavenger hunt, but you don't have any clues. So good luck on that. Anyway, that's going to do it for me. Thank you very much once again. And be sure to always remember, if it ain't broke, do not fix it.